The desert screamed. Kuwait. 1991. The air thick with smoke and burning oil, black-skied at noon, and young Jim Harrigan pressed his face into sand that tasted like fire and death and everything wrong with the world. 29 years old, 6 weeks into Desert Storm, already certain this godforsaken wasteland would be his grave. The ambush had erupted without warning. 1 second, the convoy was moving through the devastated highway of death. The next second, the world exploded in a symphony of small arms fire and RPG trails. Iraqi stragglers. Desperate. Deadly. Harrigan's units scattered like sand in a windstorm. Now he lay alone, separated from his brothers, blood running hot down his left side where shrapnel had carved a channel through his body armor. His weapon was gone, lost somewhere in the initial chaos when he dove behind a burned-out tank. All he had was a sidearm with 6 rounds and the certainty that enemy fighters were close. So close he could hear them moving through the wreckage, calling to each other in Arabic that sounded almost pleasant if you didn't know they were hunting you like an animal. Footsteps, crunching on debris, coming closer. Harrigan's hand found his pistol, drew it slow, every movement deliberate despite the panic screaming through his veins. 40 feet away, a figure materialized from the smoke. Ragged uniform. AK held low and ready. The man's eyes swept the ruins, searching. Harrigan raised the pistol, finger on the trigger. Center mass. Easy shot even with the adrenaline making his hands shake. One squeeze and the threat disappears. But before he could fire, something massive crashed through the wreckage behind the enemy soldier. The Iraqi spun, weapon coming up, and Sergeant Thomas Chen emerged like a force of nature. 40 years old and built like a wall, Chen moved with the kind of speed that shouldn't be possible for a man his size. He closed the distance in 3 strides and drove the stock of his M16 into the enemy's temple with surgical precision. The soldier dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Chen didn't pause. He grabbed Harrigan by his good arm and hauled him up with one hand while scanning the wasteland with eyes that missed nothing. "You hit?" Chen's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of absolute authority. Harrigan tried to speak. Couldn't. Just nodded at his bleeding side. "Can you move?" Another nod. "Then we move." Chen shifted his grip, supporting Harrigan's weight. "And Lieutenant, listen close. In this man's Navy, you got 2 choices every single day. Do what's right or do what's easy. You choose right even when it costs you everything. You understand me?" Harrigan didn't understand, not really. He was too young, too scared, too focused on the fact that he was still breathing when he shouldn't be. But he nodded anyway because Sergeant Chen was the kind of man you nodded to when he spoke. Chen carried him 4 miles through hostile territory, 4 miles with Iraqi soldiers searching, and Harrigan's blood painting a trail, and the whole situation spiraling toward disaster with every step. But Chen never faltered, never complained, never left him behind, even when abandoning the wounded would have been the tactically sound decision. They made it to the rally point with 10 minutes to spare. The Humvee came in fast, gunner laying down, covering fire that turned the desert into a storm of sand and tracers. Chen literally threw Harrigan into the vehicle, then climbed in behind him as the driver hit the gas and the wasteland fell away below. That was when Harrigan understood. Doing what's right meant carrying your brother 4 miles when leaving him would be easier. Doing what's right meant risking your own life for someone else's. Doing what's right meant you didn't get to choose the easy path just because the hard one hurt. The lesson branded itself into Harrigan's soul that day. It became the foundation of everything he would build his life upon. Honor, duty, brotherhood, sacrifice. These weren't just words. They were the code, the only code that mattered. 33 years later, Colonel James Harrigan sat in an office at the Pentagon and wondered if he still had the strength to live by that code. The office was corner position, 3rd floor, with windows that overlooked the Potomac and walls decorated with the accumulated weight of 4 decades in uniform. Photos with 3 different presidents, commendations, medals in shadow boxes, Purple Heart from Desert Storm, Bronze Star from Afghanistan, Silver Star from Iraq, a career measured in deployments and decisions and the kind of sacrifices that left marks you couldn't see but never stopped feeling. Harrigan himself looked every one of his 62 years, 6'1" but starting to stoop a little, still broad across the shoulders, but the muscle was losing its war with time and gravity. Hair gone silver gray and cropped military short, face weathered and lined like old leather. Eyes that had seen too much but still saw everything. The retirement ceremony invitation sat on his desk, formal cardstock with gold embossing, 90 days away. After 40 years of service, Colonel James Harrigan would lay down the uniform and walk away into whatever came next. He should have felt relief, maybe even joy. Instead, he felt hollow. His secretary knocked. Brief, professional rap that meant business. "Come, sir, you have a call on line 2. It's your son." Harrigan straightened reflexively. "Thank you, Margaret." He reached for the phone, paused, looked at the photo on his desk. Sarah. Beautiful Sarah, who he'd married at 27, who'd given him a son at 29, who'd fought cancer for 2 years before it took her 3 years ago. She smiled at him from the frame, frozen in time at a beach somewhere, happy and alive and gone. Next to her photo stood another, Michael, their son, 31 years old now and a Marine Corps captain deployed somewhere in the Middle East doing work he couldn't talk about with people who wanted him dead. The photo showed Michael in dress blues, looking squared away and professional, and so much like Harrigan himself at that age it hurt to look at. Harrigan picked up the phone. "Michael, Dad." His son's voice carried across 8,000 miles of fiber optic cable, slightly distorted but unmistakably warm. "How you holding up?" "Same as always. Counting down to retirement and missing your mother." A pause. "Yeah, me too." They let that sit for a moment. The shared grief that never really faded just became something you learned to carry. Michael broke the silence. "Dad, I'm okay. Want you to know that first. I'm not hurt." But Harrigan knew his son, knew the cadence of his speech, knew when something was wrong. "But we lost Johnson last week. Good kid, 23, from Iowa. Wife just had a baby." Harrigan closed his eyes. "I'm sorry, son. Third one in the last month, Dad. 3 Marines dead and the circumstances are wrong. They're all wrong." "Wrong how?" "Body armor. The vests are failing. Johnson took a round center mass, should have been a bruise and a cracked rib. Instead, it punched straight through, killed him in seconds." Harrigan's hand tightened on the phone. "What manufacturer?" "Triton Defense Systems." The name didn't register immediately. Harrigan pulled up procurement files on his computer while keeping Michael on the line. Triton Defense. Contract awarded 2022. $2.3 billion for body armor systems. He scrolled through quality control reports. Everything green. Suspiciously perfect scores across the board. "Dad, you still there?" "I'm here." "Michael, are you wearing Triton armor right now?" "Yeah, we all are. And Dad, I don't trust it. None of us do. It feels wrong, too light. The ceramic plates sound hollow when you tap them." "Jesus." Harrigan rubbed his face with his free hand. "Have you reported this up your chain of command?" "Twice. Both times we got told the equipment meets specifications and we're imagining problems. But I've been doing this long enough to know the difference between paranoia and legitimate concern. Something's not right. I'll look into it." "Dad, don't. Don't mess up your retirement over this." A memory flashed through Harrigan's mind. Sergeant Chen carrying him through the desert. "Choose right even when it costs you." "I'll look into it," Harrigan repeated. "You focus on staying alive. That's an order." Michael laughed. The sound was tired but genuine. "Yes, sir." "Hey, Dad?" "Yeah? Love you. Love you too, son. Come home safe." The line went dead. Harrigan sat alone in the silence of his office and felt the first cold fingers of dread creeping up his spine. Field reports of equipment failures. Perfect quality control scores. A son who didn't trust the equipment designed to keep him alive. The pieces didn't fit together, and in Harrigan's experience, when pieces didn't fit, it usually meant someone was forcing them into place wrong. He pulled up the full Triton contract file. Started reading, really reading, with the kind of attention to detail that had kept him alive through 4 wars and a dozen lesser conflicts. The contract award was clean on the surface. Triton's bid hadn't been the lowest, but their technical specifications looked superior. The evaluation board's recommendations seemed reasonable. Signatures from senior officers Harrigan recognized, including one that made him pause. General Robert Kessler, Chief of Acquisitions, old friend from Harrigan's SEAL days. They'd served together in Iraq, bled together in Afghanistan, saved each other's lives more times than either could count. If Kessler had signed off on Triton, that should have been good enough. Should have been. But Harrigan had learned to trust his instincts, and right now his instincts were screaming that something was deeply wrong. He spent the next 4 hours drilling into the contract details. The more he read, the more wrong things felt. Independent testing reports that should have been filed weren't there. quality assurance documentation had gaps. Field incident reports mentioned equipment failures, but in vague terms that didn't trigger formal investigations. It was professional, almost invisible, the kind of corruption that required skill to hide. By the time Margaret knocked to tell him it was past 1900 hours and maybe he should go home, Harrigan had filled 3 pages with notes. Names, dates, inconsistencies, questions that needed answers. He drove home on autopilot. Small house in Arlington. 2-bedroom, 1 bath, too quiet since Sarah died. The kind of place that felt like a way station instead of a home. Dinner was leftover Chinese food eaten standing at the kitchen counter while reviewing files on his laptop. Professional habit. Treat every meal like it might be interrupted. Never fully relax. The call came at 02:37 hours. Harrigan woke from shallow sleep with his hand already reaching for the phone. Decades of conditioning. When the phone rings at 02:37, it's never good news. Colonel Harrigan? The voice was young, female, official. This is Lieutenant Chen with Marine Corps Family Services. Harrigan was already sitting up, heart hammering. What happened? Sir, I'm calling to inform you that Captain Michael Harrigan was critically wounded in action approximately 4 hours ago. He's been stabilized and is currently being transported to Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany. The room tilted. Harrigan gripped the phone hard enough to hurt. How bad? Sir, I don't have complete medical details, but I'm authorized to tell you the injury was a gunshot wound to the chest. The medical team expects him to survive, but the situation is serious. Where did it happen? I can't disclose that information, sir. Who shot him? I don't have that information. What was he wearing? Sir, his body armor. What manufacturer? A pause, brief but telling. Sir, I believe it was Triton Defense Systems equipment, but I need to verify. Don't bother. Harrigan was already on his feet, already moving. I'm booking the first flight to Germany. Tell him I'm coming. Yes, sir. Colonel, I'm very sorry. Harrigan ended the call and stood in the darkness of his bedroom with his hands shaking and his heart trying to punch through his ribs. His son, his boy, shot. The vest failed. The goddamn vest failed just like it had failed Johnson and the others. He called Margaret at 02:45. Woke her up. Didn't apologize. I need emergency leave approved and a flight to Landstuhl today. Sir, is everything? My son was shot. The words came out flat. Dead. Just get it done, Margaret. Right away, sir. By 0600, Harrigan was at Dulles. By 800, he was in the air. By 1400 Eastern, 2000 local time, he was walking into Landstuhl Regional Medical Center in Germany, still wearing the same clothes he'd slept in. A Navy doctor intercepted him. Commander's rank, exhausted eyes. Captain Harrigan is stable, Colonel. He's sedated, but the surgery went well. Where was he hit? Center mass, just left of the sternum. The round missed his heart by approximately 2 centimeters. Harrigan felt his knees try to give out. Locked them through sheer will. Can I see him? Of course. But Colonel, may I speak frankly? Go ahead. The doctor glanced around, lowered his voice. That vest should have stopped the round. It was a 7.62 millimeter standard AK-47 load. Triton armor is rated for that. Hell, it's rated for bigger. But the ceramic plate just shattered, like cheap pottery. You examined it? I did. And Colonel, I've seen a lot of combat injuries, a lot of body armor failures. This doesn't look like a failure. It looks like a defect. The word hung in the air between them. Can I see the vest? I kept it. Protocol says it should have been destroyed, but something felt wrong, so I held on to it. The doctor led Harrigan to a storage room, pulled out a sealed evidence bag containing the damaged armor. Harrigan took it, held it up to the light. The ceramic trauma plate had a spiderweb pattern of cracks radiating out from the impact point. He'd seen thousands of these plates in his career, knew how they were supposed to fail. This wasn't right. The fracture pattern was wrong, too uniform, too consistent with a structural weakness rather than combat damage. Can I keep this? The doctor looked at him for a long moment. You didn't get it from me. Understood. Harrigan tucked the vest under his arm and followed the doctor to ICU. Michael lay in a bed surrounded by monitors and tubes and machines that beeped and hummed with mechanical efficiency. His face was pale, younger than 31 somehow, vulnerable in a way Harrigan had never seen him. He pulled a chair close, sat, took his son's hand. I'm here, Mike. Dad's here. No response except the steady beep of the heart monitor. Harrigan sat there for 3 hours. Just sat and held his son's hand and watched him breathe and thought about Sergeant Chen carrying him through the desert all those years ago. Choose right even when it costs you. His phone buzzed. text message from a number he didn't recognize. Then he looked closer and ice water flooded his veins. Tommy Chen. Harrigan hadn't spoken to the man in almost 20 years. Hadn't even known he was still alive. But the message was brief and impossible to ignore. Heard about Michael. My grandson was hit too. Same unit, same vests. We should talk. Harrigan looked at his son, looked at the damaged vest, looked at his phone. Then he typed a response. Tomorrow. Where? The reply came within seconds. Bethesda. Cafeteria. More 400 hours. Harrigan put his phone away, leaned close to Michael, kissed his forehead like he used to when Michael was small. I'm gonna fix this, son, I promise you. Whoever did this is going to pay. The monitors beeped. Michael breathed. The machines hummed their electronic lullaby. And Colonel James Harrigan sat in the darkness and felt the old fire beginning to kindle in his chest. The same fire that had kept him alive through Desert Storm in Afghanistan and Iraq and all the years between. The fire that said some things are worth fighting for no matter the cost. His son had been shot because someone chose profit over protection. Someone cut corners. Someone valued money more than the lives of the Marines who trusted that equipment to keep them breathing. Harrigan was going to find out who, and when he did, there would be a reckoning. 2 weeks later, Michael was stable enough to transfer stateside. Bethesda Naval Hospital. Room with a view of the parking lot and walls painted that particular shade of institutional beige that seemed designed to depress the human spirit. Harrigan visited every day, sat by his son's bed, read to him from the books Michael had loved as a kid. Tom Clancy novels mostly, stories about honor and duty and men who did the hard things because someone had to. Michael woke up on day 4, eyes fluttering open, confused and disoriented. Dad, I'm here. Harrigan squeezed his hand. You're okay. You're at Bethesda. You're safe. What happened? You were shot, but you're going to be fine. Michael processed this, started to sit up, gasped at the pain. Easy, easy, son. Don't push it. Johnson? Harrigan shook his head. Michael's face crumpled. God damn it. God damn it. He had a baby. I know. They lay there in the silence. Father and son. Connected by blood and grief and the particular kind of understanding that only comes from shared service. The vest failed, Michael said finally. I know. Dad, I need to tell you something. Before I got hit, I was talking to some of the other guys. They've been having problems too. The plates crack if you drop them too hard. The stitching on the carrier vest comes apart. It's not just one bad batch, it's systemic. How many Marines know? Most of the company. But nobody wants to report it because we're afraid command will think we're just complaining. Or command already knows and doesn't want to acknowledge it. Michael looked at his father. Really looked at him. Dad, what are you thinking? I'm thinking someone needs to find out what's going on. And I'm thinking I'm the someone who's going to do it. You've got 90 days until retirement. 87 now. Don't throw that away, please. Harrigan stood, walked to the window, looked out at the parking lot and the gray sky and the whole ordinary world continuing on while his son lay in a hospital bed because someone decided saving money was more important than saving lives. When you were 8 years old, you fell off your bike, remember? Michael smiled faintly, busted my arm. Your mother wanted to take you to the emergency room, but you insisted you were fine. Tough little guy, didn't want anyone to think you were weak, so I took you into the garage and I set that arm myself. You remember what I told you? Being tough doesn't mean pretending you're not hurt. It means doing what needs to be done, even when you're hurt. Exactly. Harrigan turned from the window. Michael, 43 Marines are dead. I pulled the casualty reports. 43 confirmed deaths linked to Triton vest failures over the past 18 months. 43 sons, 43 fathers who got the worst phone call of their lives. And you almost made it 44. Dad, your mother died asking me to take care of you. I failed. I wasn't there. I was deployed somewhere doing something I can't even remember now because it doesn't matter. But this matters. Those vests failed. If I walk away, if I retire quietly, those 43 deaths mean nothing. Your injury means nothing. And the next Marine who gets shot won't be saved either. Michael was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "What are you going to do?" "Whatever it takes." That same afternoon, Harrigan drove to the hospital cafeteria. 1,400 hours exactly. He found Tommy Chen sitting at a corner table nursing a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold an hour ago. Chen had aged, 74 now. Still big across the shoulders, but gravity had won its war. Face deeply lined, hands gnarled with arthritis. but the eyes were the same, sharp, aware, missing nothing. They looked at each other across 33 years in a desert that lived in both their nightmares. Lieutenant, Chen's voice had gone gravelly with age but still carried that tone of absolute authority. Sergeant, it's Tommy now. Been retired longer than you've been alive. Harrigan sat. Tommy. Chen slid a photo across the table. Young man in Marine Corps dress blues. Squared away. Professional. Eyes that looked too old for his face. David. My grandson. 24. He was in the same unit as your boy. Was? Still is. He survived. Took a round to the plate same as Michael, but his vest held. Barely. He said the ceramic cracked, but didn't shatter completely. Pure luck. They sat with that for a moment. You look into Triton yet? Chen asked. Some. And? And it stinks. Everything about it stinks. Perfect quality control scores, but field reports showing consistent failures. Contract awarded to a company that didn't submit the low bid. Testing documentation missing. It's professional corruption. The kind that requires expertise to hide. Who approved the contract? Multiple signatures. But the chief approval came from General Robert Kessler. Chen's eyebrows went up. Your old SEAL buddy? Yeah. You think he's dirty? I don't know what I think, but I'm going to find out. Chen leaned back, studied Harrigan with those sharp eyes. You know what this is going to cost you? My retirement, probably. My reputation, maybe. My pension, possibly. And you're doing it anyway? Harrigan met his gaze. 1991, Desert Storm. You remember what you told me? Chen's face softened. Christ, that was a lifetime ago. You carried me 4 miles through hostile territory. You could have left me. Should have left me. It would have been the tactically sound decision, but you didn't. And you told me choose right even when it cost you everything. I was young and stupid. You were the best man I ever knew. And you taught me that some things matter more than safety, more than comfort, more than the easy path. He paused, let the words settle. My son almost died because Marcus Vaughn chose profit over protection. 43 other sons did die, and I'll be damned if I let that stand just because fighting it might cost me my pension or my reputation or my peace. Those Marines trusted the equipment. They trusted the system. That trust was betrayed. Someone has to answer for that. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached across the table and gripped Harrigan's hand. His grip was still strong, despite the arthritis. Okay, Jim. Okay, but we do this smart. We build a case that can't be ignored. We find allies. We don't go rushing in like we're 29 and bulletproof. Agreed. And Jim, when this is over, when we've torn down whoever needs tearing down, you're going to retire. You're going to spend time with that boy of yours. You're going to live. You understand me? Harrigan smiled. It felt strange on his face, like a muscle he'd forgotten how to use. I understand. Good. Now let's figure out who we need to talk to and what we need to prove. They spent the next 3 hours in that cafeteria mapping out a plan. 2 old soldiers hunched over cold coffee and borrowed napkins, building a strategy to take down corruption that reached into the highest levels of military procurement. It felt like 1991 all over again. Back in the desert, back in the fight, back where everything was simple because the mission was clear and the enemy was defined, and all you had to do was move forward no matter what it cost. By the time Harrigan drove home that evening, the sun was setting over Arlington and his path was set. No more uncertainty, no more doubt, just the mission and the brothers who would help him complete it. He stopped by Sarah's grave on the way home. Small cemetery, quiet. Her headstone was simple granite with just her name and dates and the word beloved. Harrigan knelt in the grass, placed his hand on the cool stone. Sarah, I know I promised I'd retire quiet, spend time with Michael, maybe travel, see the world outside a combat zone. But something's happened, something that can't be ignored. Michael was shot and 43 other boys are dead, and it's because someone chose money over morality. I have to fix this. I have to make sure no other father gets the call I got. I'm sorry if I'm breaking my promise to you, but I think you'd understand. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere a bird called out. The world kept turning. I love you, I miss you, and I'm going to make this right. Then I'll come back and I'll tell you all about it. Harrigan stood, brushed grass off his knees. And maybe you can tell me if I did the right thing. He drove home through the gathering darkness, made himself dinner, sat at his desk and pulled up the Triton files again. His phone rang. Margaret. Sir, you have a visitor at the front gate. Mr. Marcus Vaughn from Triton Defense Systems. He says it's urgent. Harrigan felt his pulse quicken. Send him away. Sir, he's quite insistent. He says he's an old classmate of yours from West Point, and he'd hate to have to discuss sensitive matters in a parking lot. A threat wrapped in courtesy. Professional. Fine. Tell him I'll meet him at Rosario's in 30 minutes. The steakhouse on Wilson. Yes, sir. Harrigan changed into civilian clothes, jeans and a button-down shirt. Tried to look casual when he felt anything but. Then he drove to Rosario's and found Marcus Vaughn waiting in a corner booth. Vaughn looked successful. Expensive suit, manicured hands, hair perfectly styled. The kind of man who'd traded his uniform for a corporate office and never looked back. They'd been in the same West Point class 40 years ago, had run into each other at reunions, had shared the occasional drink and the particular camaraderie that came from shared youth. Jim Harrigan? Vaughn stood, extended his hand, smiled with too many teeth. It's been too long. Harrigan shook his hand, sat across from him, Marcus. I heard about Michael. How's he doing? He'll live. Thank God. Vaughn signaled the waiter, ordered a bourbon neat. And for you, Jim? Water. Still the straight shooter. I always admired that about you. The drinks came. Vaughn took a long pull of bourbon. Harrigan waited. Jim, I'll be direct. I'm hearing some concerning rumors. Something about you asking questions about Triton's contracts. Michael was shot wearing Triton armor. The vest failed. So yes, I'm asking questions. And I understand that. Any father would. But Jim, you have to understand the big picture here. Triton provides 680,000 vests to our military. We support 200,000 American jobs. We're part of the defense industrial base that keeps this country safe. 43 Marines are dead because your vests don't work. Vaughn's smile never wavered. That's a serious accusation. It's a fact. Is it? Or is it cherry-picked data from someone looking for a pattern that doesn't exist? Jim, in any manufacturing run of that scale, you're going to have some failures. It's statistics. It's math. We're running a 0.006% failure rate. That's well within industry standards. You're putting a price on Marines' lives. I'm being realistic. Vaughn leaned forward. Jim, you've got, what, 90 days until retirement? Full pension, legacy intact, the respect of everyone who matters. Why throw that away chasing shadows? Because my son almost died, but he didn't. He's alive. He's going to recover. You should be grateful. Harrigan felt something cold and hard settling in his chest. I am grateful. I'm also angry, and I'm not walking away. Vaughn's expression shifted. The friendly facade cracked just a little. Jim, listen carefully. You start making noise about Triton, you're going to make powerful enemies. I have friends. General Kessler is on my board. Half the Pentagon procurement office has relationships with my company. You go to war with us and you'll lose. Maybe. And it won't just be your career. Michael is up for promotion to major. Be a shame if irregularities were found in his service record. If questions were raised about his fitness for command. These things happen, Jim. Paperwork gets lost. Evaluations get revised. Careers end. Harrigan stood slowly, very slowly, using all his control to keep his hands from shaking with rage. You just threatened my son. Vaughn remained seated. Calm. I'm simply pointing out that actions have consequences. You listen to me, Marcus. You listen very carefully. My son almost died because you cut corners to save money. 43 other sons did die. And you sit there in your expensive suit talking about statistics and failure rates like we're discussing quarterly earnings instead of human lives. Jim, sit down. People are watching. I'm going to find out exactly what you did. I'm going to document every corner you cut, every regulation you violated, every life you destroyed for profit. And when I have enough evidence, I'm going to bury you so deep you'll never see daylight again. That's ambitious talk from a man 90 days from retirement. Then I guess we'll find out in 90 days who's still standing. Harrigan walked out of the restaurant without looking back. His hands were shaking now. Adrenaline and rage, and something that felt dangerously close to the edge of control. He sat in his truck for 10 minutes, just breathing, just trying to center himself. His phone buzzed. Tommy Chen. You okay? How did you know? I'm parked across the street. Saw you come out. You looked like you wanted to kill someone. I did. The man you were with? Marcus Vaughn, CEO of Triton. What did he want? To threaten me. To threaten Michael. To make it clear that if I keep digging, I'm going to pay. And I told him to go to hell. Good. Because I found something you need to see. What? Not over the phone. Come to my place tomorrow. 0800. I'll be there. Harrigan drove home through dark streets, parked in his driveway, sat in the silence. He was committed now. No turning back. Vaughn would move against him. Kessler would probably try to shut him down. His career was likely over. His pension was at risk. Everything he'd built over 40 years hung in the balance. But 43 Marines were dead, and his son almost became 44. And some things were worth fighting for, even when the cost was everything you had. Harrigan looked at himself in the rearview mirror, saw an old man with gray hair and tired eyes and too many years in the fight. Then he remembered a desert in 1991, remembered Sergeant Chen carrying him to safety, remembered the lesson that had shaped every decision since. Choose right even when it costs you. He got out of the truck, walked into his empty house, made himself a drink, and began planning the war that would define his final days in uniform. The old soldier was going back to battle one last time, and God help anyone who stood in his way. Tommy Chen lived in a small house in Silver Spring, Maryland, single-story rambler with peeling paint and a yard that had gone mostly to weeds. But the garage was immaculate, clean concrete floor, tools organized with military precision, the smell of gun oil and sawdust and honest work. Harrigan arrived at 0800 sharp, found Chen already waiting, sitting on a stool with a coffee mug in his gnarled hands. "You look like hell," Chen said without preamble. "Didn't sleep much. Join the club." Chen gestured to a workbench covered in papers. "Spent half the night going through this. You're going to want to sit down." Harrigan pulled up another stool. "What did you find?" Chen spread out a series of documents. Printouts, highlighted sections, notes scrawled in margins. "You know anything about defense contracting?" "Enough. Then you know it's supposed to be competitive. Multiple bids, evaluation criteria, best value wins." Chen tapped one document. Triton's bid wasn't the lowest, wasn't even close. 3 other companies came in cheaper, but they won anyway. "Yeah, and look at this. The evaluation board that selected Triton had 7 members. I tracked down their current positions. 5 of them now work for companies that do business with Triton. One's on Triton's board of directors." Harrigan felt his jaw tighten. That's textbook corruption. Gets better. Chen pulled out another sheet. "The independent testing that's supposed to verify armor quality? The test facility that certified Triton is owned by a shell corporation. I traced it through 3 layers of paperwork. Want to guess who the ultimate owner is? Marcus Vaughn. Bingo. They tested themselves in surprise. They passed with flying colors." "Jesus Christ." Harrigan rubbed his face. "How did nobody catch this?" "Oh, people caught it." Chen slid over a thin folder. "Took me some digging, but I found this. 3 separate whistleblower complaints filed with the Inspector General's office over the past 2 years. All 3 alleged problems with Triton's equipment. All 3 investigations were closed without action." "Who closed them?" "That's where it gets interesting." Chen's expression was grim. "The IG investigator who handled all 3 cases retired 6 months ago. Guess where he works now? Triton, as their vice president of government relations, making 3 times his government salary. They bought him off." "Looks that way." Harrigan stood, started pacing. The small garage suddenly felt too confining. His mind was racing through implications and connections in the sheer scale of what they were looking at. "Tommy, this isn't just contract fraud. This is systemic. Multiple agencies, multiple officials, years of planning, which means they're dug in deep and they're not going to go down easy. We need help. We need someone who can take this evidence and actually do something with it." Chen nodded. "I made a call last night. Old friend from the Gulf War, Pat Reeves. You know her? Major Reeves, JAG officer? She's retired now, runs a legal aid clinic for veterans. But she still has connections, and she knows military law better than anyone I've ever met. Will she help?" I told her about Michael, about David, about the 43. She said she's in. "When can we meet her?" "This afternoon. 1400 hours at her office." Harrigan checked his watch. "That gives us 6 hours. What else do we need?" Chen pulled out a thick binder. "I made copies of everything. But Jim, we're missing the smoking gun. We have circumstantial evidence. We have suspicious patterns. We have coincidences that smell bad. But we don't have direct proof of criminal intent." "What would that look like?" "Emails, internal memos, documentation showing Vaughn knew the armor was defective and approved it anyway. Maybe financial records showing the kickbacks. We need the paper trail." "How do we get that?" Chen smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "We need someone on the inside, someone they don't suspect. You have someone in mind? Maybe. Give me until this afternoon. Let me make some calls. They spent the next few hours organizing their evidence, creating timelines, documenting connections, building the skeleton of a case that could stand up to scrutiny. At 13:30 hours, they drove to Pat Reeves' office in downtown D.C. Small suite in an older building, waiting room full of veterans in various states of need, some young, some old, all of them carrying the particular weight that came from service in the struggle to find purpose after. Reeves met them at the door. 58 years old, 5'6", steel gray hair cut short, eyes that missed nothing, and a handshake like a vice. Colonel Harrigan, it's been a long time. Major, good to see you. It's just Pat now. Come on back. Her office was organized chaos. Files stacked on every surface, law books crammed into shelves, a desk buried under paperwork. But she moved through it with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where everything was. Tommy filled me in on the basics, she said, gesturing for them to sit. But I want to hear it from you, Colonel. What exactly are we dealing with? Harrigan laid out the case methodically. The vest failures, Michael's injury, the 43 deaths, Vaughn's threats, Chen's research into the contract corruption. When he finished, Reeves sat back and steepled her fingers. This is big, she said quietly. Bigger than I think you realize. How so? If Vaughn and Kessler are involved at this level, they've got protection. Political protection. The kind that reaches into Congress and the Pentagon and maybe even higher. You go after them and they're not going to fight fair. I don't care about fair. I care about right. Reeves smiled. It was a tired smile, but genuine. That's what Tommy said you'd say. All right, I'm in, but we do this smart. We need ironclad evidence. The kind that can't be dismissed or buried or explained away. Chen mentioned we need someone inside. Reeves nodded. I might know someone. Captain in the acquisitions office. Young guy. His younger brother was killed 6 months ago. Lance Corporal. Died when his vest failed. He know it was Triton? He knows. He's been quietly collecting evidence, but he's scared. Scared of retaliation. Scared of losing his career. Scared of ending up like the other whistleblowers. Can you set up a meeting? Already did. He's coming here at 1600. Harrigan looked at this woman he'd served with decades ago. Saw the same fire he remembered. The same absolute commitment to doing what was right, regardless of the cost. Thank you, Pat. Don't thank me yet. We've got a long way to go and a lot of powerful people who want to stop us. The next 2 hours they spent wargaming scenarios. What evidence they needed. How to protect their source. What legal strategies would work. Reeves had a whiteboard covered in notes and connections by the time the door buzzer sounded. That'll be him, she said. The man who entered was 30 at most. Thin, nervous, eyes that darted around like he expected trouble. Captain's bars on his uniform, name tape that read Dawson. Captain Dawson, Reeves said gently. These are the men I told you about. Colonel Harrigan and Sergeant Major Chen. You can trust them. Dawson shook hands. His grip was weak, sweaty. Sir, I'm not sure I should be here. Harrigan studied him. Saw the fear, but also something else. Anger. Grief. The same combination that drove Harrigan himself. Captain, did you lose someone? My brother. Dawson's voice cracked. Danny, 21 years old. He was at Paris Island. Just graduated boot camp. First deployment. He lasted 2 months before he took a round and the vest didn't stop it. I'm sorry for your loss. Everyone's sorry. Nobody does anything about it. Dawson's hands were shaking. I filed reports. I raised concerns. I got told to stop making waves. That I was damaging unit morale. That I needed to accept that sometimes Marines die. But not like this, Chen said quietly. Not because some corporate executive decided saving money was more important than saving lives. Dawson looked at him. Really looked at him, you understand. My grandson survived by pure luck. Your brother didn't. That's not acceptable losses. That's murder. The word hung in the air. Captain, Harrigan said, we're building a case against Triton Defense, against everyone who enabled them. But we need evidence, direct evidence. Do you have access to internal communications? Dawson swallowed hard. I work in procurement. I see contract files, email chains, budget documents. I've been copying things, just in case. In case of what? In case someone finally gave a damn. Reeves leaned forward. Captain, anything you provide us could put your career at risk, could expose you to retaliation, could make you a target. You need to understand that before you commit. Ma'am, my brother is dead. His wife is raising their daughter alone. His daughter will grow up without a father because Marcus Vaughn wanted to pad his profit margins. I already lost my career the day I decided to care more about Danny than my pension. He pulled a thumb drive from his pocket, placed it on Reeves' desk. Everything I could find. Emails between Vaughn and Kessler. Budget memos showing where they cut costs. Internal quality control reports that were suppressed. It's all there. Harrigan picked up the drive, felt the weight of it. This small piece of plastic and silicon might contain the ammunition they needed to bring down an empire. Captain, you just committed an act of extraordinary courage. No, sir. I just finally did what I should have done 6 months ago. They spent the next 4 hours going through Dawson's files. The evidence was damning, worse than Harrigan had imagined. Email chains showing Vaughn personally approving the use of substandard ceramic materials. Budget documents proving Triton saved $231 million by cutting quality. Internal test reports showing the plates failed standards but were approved anyway, with a note to revise the testing protocols. And throughout it all, General Robert Kessler's name, copied on emails, listed as consultant, receiving payments to a shell company that existed solely to funnel money from Triton to his personal accounts. $2.5 million over 3 years. Look at this, Chen said, pointing to one email exchange. Vaughn's asking Kessler about an upcoming GAO audit. Kessler replies that he'll handle it. 2 weeks later, the audit scope gets revised to exclude equipment testing. He killed the investigation before it started, Reeves said. Harrigan felt sick. He'd known Kessler for 30 years, had bled with him, saved his life, been saved by him. And now this. There's more, Dawson said quietly. He pulled up a spreadsheet. This is a list of every documented vest failure. Dates, locations, names. There are 68 total incidents, 43 fatalities, 25 serious injuries. 68, Harrigan repeated. We only knew about 43. The other 25 were classified as training accidents or attributed to other causes. But if you look at the medical reports, they all show the same pattern. Penetrating trauma that should have been stopped by the vest. They covered up 25 cases, at least. Could be more we don't know about. The room went quiet. 4 people sitting with the weight of 68 lives hanging over them. We have enough, Reeves said finally. This is prosecutable. This is irrefutable. We need to get this to the right people. Who are the right people, Dawson asked. The IG's office is compromised. Half the Pentagon leadership has connections to Triton. Who can we trust? Harrigan thought for a long moment, then said, Senator Morrison. The 3 others looked at him. Catherine Morrison, Reeves asked. Yeah, she lost her son in Iraq, Army Ranger. She's been aggressive on defense contractor oversight ever since. She's got no love for companies that profit off our troops. She's also got enemies, Chen pointed out. You go to her with this, it becomes political. It's already political, Harrigan said. The question is whether we want it to be political theater or political action. Morrison has the platform to hold hearings, to make this public, to force accountability. Dawson looked nervous. Sir, if this goes public, I'm exposed. They'll know the leak came from inside. We'll protect you as much as we can, Reeves said. But the captain's right. Once we trigger this, there's no taking it back. Good, Harrigan said. Because I don't want to take it back. I want to burn this whole corrupt system to the ground. Chen smiled. That's the spirit. The meeting broke up at 2 hours. Dawson left first, looking over his shoulder like he expected assassins in the parking garage. Reeves walked Harrigan and Chen out. Colonel, she said as they reached their vehicles, you know Vaughn's going to fight back. Hard. He's got resources and connections and no moral boundaries. Let him fight. I've been in fights before. Not like this one. This isn't combat. This is political warfare. Character assassination. They're going to dig up every mistake you've ever made and amplify it until people question whether you're stable. Are you trying to talk me out of this? No, I'm trying to make sure you know what you're walking into. I know, and I'm walking into it anyway. Reeves nodded. Then we better make sure we win. Harrigan drove home in the darkness, replayed the day's discoveries in his mind, the scope of the corruption, the depth of the betrayal, the sheer casual evil of men who valued profit over the lives of the troops they claimed to support. His phone rang. Michael. Dad. Hey, son, how you feeling? Better. They're talking about releasing me in a few days. Physical therapy and light duty for a while, but I'll be okay. Good. That's good. Dad, I heard you met with some Pentagon people. People are talking. What are they saying? That you're asking questions about Triton. That you're making waves. Some guys think you're right. Some guys think you're on a crusade that's going to end badly. What do you think? I think you're my father, and I trust you. But Dad, I'm worried. Vaughn has a lot of power. So do I. You've got 87 days until retirement. And I'm going to spend every one of them making sure no other Marine dies the way Danny Dawson died, the way Johnson died, the way you almost died. Michael was quiet for a moment. Dad, be careful, please. I will. Get some rest, son. Love you, Dad. Love you too. Harrigan ended the call and sat in his driveway. His house was dark, empty, waiting. He thought about Sarah, wondered what she would say if she could see him now. Probably tell him he was being stubborn, that he was risking everything over principle, that he should just let it go and retire in peace. But she'd be wrong, because some things couldn't be let go. Some things demanded action regardless of cost. He went inside, made himself dinner, sat at his desk and began drafting a letter to Senator Morrison, laying out the case, requesting a meeting, knowing that once he sent it, he was committed to a path that would likely destroy his career and possibly his life. His phone buzzed. Chen, you okay? Yeah, just thinking. About what? About whether we're doing the right thing. You having second thoughts? Harrigan looked at the letter on his screen, at the evidence files, at the photo of Michael in his dress blues. No, not second thoughts. Just making sure I understand what we're about to unleash. Jim, I'm 74 years old. You know what the doctors told me 3 months ago? What? That I got maybe a year and a half if I'm lucky. Heart disease. Advanced. Too far gone for surgery. Harrigan felt his chest tighten. Tommy, I didn't tell you because I didn't want pity. But here's the thing, Jim. I'm dying. That's a fact. But I get to choose how I spend the time I got left. And I choose to spend it doing something that matters. You should be with your family, with David. I am doing this for David. For every grandson who deserves to serve without fear that his own equipment will kill him. This is my last mission, brother. And I'll be damned if I waste it sitting in a rocking chair waiting for the end. Harrigan closed his eyes. Jesus, Tommy. So don't you dare get cold feet now. We're doing the right thing. We both know it. And if it costs us everything, then at least we'll go down swinging. All right, you stubborn old bastard. Takes one to know one. Now send that letter to Morrison and let's get this war started. Harrigan sent the letter at 22:47 hours. Then he sat in the darkness and waited for the world to change. The response came at 06:34 the next morning. Senator Morrison's office, brief, professional. The senator would like to meet with you at your earliest convenience, this afternoon if possible. Harrigan called Chen, called Reeves, called Dawson. By 1400 hours, they were all sitting in Morrison's Senate office. A power suite with views of the Capitol and walls lined with photos of Morrison with various presidents and dignitaries. The senator herself was 67, former Army nurse, Iraq veteran, lost her son to an IED in 2007. She had a reputation as a bulldog on military affairs and zero tolerance for corruption. She read through their evidence in silence, took her time, made notes, asked sharp questions that showed she understood both the military and legal implications. When she finished, she looked at Harrigan over her reading glasses. Colonel, this is explosive. You understand that? Yes, ma'am. If I pursue this, if I call hearings, Triton will come after all of you. They'll attack your credibility. They'll dig into your past. They'll try to destroy you. I understand. And you're willing to accept that? 43 Marines are dead, Senator. My son almost became 44. So yes, I'm willing to accept whatever they throw at me. Morrison looked at Chen. Sergeant Major? I'm dying anyway, ma'am. Might as well make it count. Then at Reeves, Major? I've spent my career defending the law. This is the law being violated by the people who should protect it. I'm in. Finally at Dawson, Captain, my brother's daughter will grow up without a father because of these men. I owe it to her to fight. Morrison nodded slowly. Set down the documents. All right, I'll schedule hearings. Senate Armed Services Committee. We'll subpoena Vaughn and Kessler. We'll put all of this on the record. But I need you to understand something. Harrigan leaned forward. What's that? This is going to get ugly. Uglier than you imagine. These men have friends in very high places. They're going to use every trick in the book to discredit you and bury this. You need to be prepared for that. We're prepared. Then let's bring them down. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks out. Time to prepare. Time to organize testimony. Time to coordinate with Morrison's staff on the legal and procedural elements. Time for Vaughn to strike back. The first attack came 2 days after they met with Morrison. Front page of the Washington Post. Anonymous sources claiming Colonel Harrigan had been under investigation for mishandling classified information. that his security clearance was under review, that mental health concerns had been raised. All of it carefully worded to avoid actual lies but create maximum doubt. Harrigan's phone started ringing at 0600. Reporters, old colleagues, people he hadn't spoken to in years, all wanting to know if the allegations were true. He referred them all to Reeves, who issued a statement calling the claims baseless character assassination. But the damage was done. Social media lit up. Veterans forums split between those who supported Harrigan and those who questioned his stability. Cable news ran segments asking whether a distinguished officer had finally cracked under pressure. Day 3, the attacks expanded to Chen. Questions about his business, suggestions of financial impropriety, implications that he was using his grandson's injury to shake down defense contractors. Day 5, Reeves' legal clinic got anonymous threats, warnings that if she didn't drop the case, her clients would face additional scrutiny from federal agencies. Day 7, Dawson was placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into unauthorized access of classified systems. They were hitting every pressure point, systematically trying to isolate and destroy each member of the team. Harrigan, Chen, and Reeves met at Chen's garage, regrouped, assessed the damage. "They're playing dirty," Reeves said. "Did we expect anything else?" Chen was cleaning a pistol. Old habits. His hands moved with practiced efficiency despite the arthritis. "Dawson's scared," Harrigan said. "He called me last night. He's thinking about withdrawing his testimony." "Can't blame him," Chen said. "Kid's got his whole career ahead of him." "Had," Reeves corrected. "They've already destroyed it. Whether he testifies or not, he's done in the Pentagon. Then we need to make sure his sacrifice means something." "How's Michael handling it?" Chen asked. "He's angry. Wants to know who's leaking lies about his father. I told him to stay out of it." "Will he listen?" Harrigan smiled without humor. "He's my son. What do you think?" The attacks continued. Day 9 brought allegations that Harrigan had used his position to steer contracts to companies owned by friends. Completely fabricated, but plausible enough to require denials. Day 11 saw suggestions that Chen's heart condition was being used to gain sympathy, that he was exaggerating his illness for dramatic effect. Day 14, someone leaked Reeves' client list, names and cases of vulnerable veterans who'd sought her help, exposed them all to public scrutiny and harassment. It was professional destruction, surgical, effective, but they held the line. Morrison called Harrigan on day 16. "Colonel, my office is getting pressured to cancel the hearings. Leadership is suggesting we should let the DOD Inspector General handle this internally. Will you cancel?" "Hell no, but I wanted you to know what we're up against." "Appreciated, Senator. How are you holding up?" "I've been through worse." "Have you?" "Because this looks pretty bad from where I'm sitting." Harrigan looked around his empty house, at the stack of hate mail on his kitchen counter, at the news playing on mute showing his photo with the caption, "Disgraced Colonel or Whistleblower." "Senator, in 1991, I was lying in the Kuwaiti desert convinced I was going to die. A good man carried me to safety and taught me that doing what's right matters more than doing what's easy. I'm not going to dishonor that lesson now." Morrison was quiet for a moment. "Your friend Chen, he really dying?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then we better make sure this counts. Hearings are still on. 2 weeks from today. Be ready." "We will be." The final week before the hearing, Harrigan focused on preparation, rehearsing testimony with Reeves, organizing evidence, making sure every fact was bulletproof and every claim was documented. Michael was released from Bethesda, came to stay with Harrigan while he recovered. The first night, they sat in the living room and Michael asked the question that had been hanging between them. "Dad, is this worth it? Everything they're doing to you?" Harrigan looked at his son, saw the scars, the pain, the young man who'd come within 2 centimeters of death because someone chose profit over protection. "Yeah, son, it's worth it. Even if you lose your pension, your reputation, everything you've built, especially then. Because if I walk away, if I let them win through intimidation, then I'm telling you that your life doesn't matter, that Johnson's life didn't matter, that all 43 of those Marines were acceptable losses. And I can't do that. I won't." Michael nodded slowly. "Mom would be proud of you." "Your mom would tell me I'm being stubborn and foolish and risking everything over principle." "Yeah, and then she'd tell you she's proud of you anyway." They sat together in comfortable silence. Father and son, both warriors, both wounded, both committed to seeing this through. The night before the hearing, Harrigan couldn't sleep. He stood at his window looking out at the dark street and thought about all the decisions that had led him here. The phone rang. "Chen, you ready for tomorrow?" "As ready as I'll ever be." "Jim, I need to tell you something. I'm in the hospital." What happened? Heart attack. Mild one. But the doctors say I can't testify tomorrow. Too risky. Tommy, don't. Don't you dare go soft on me now. You got the evidence? You got Morrison's support. You don't need me. Yes, I do. You're my witness. You're my proof I'm not crazy. You got 68 dead and wounded Marines as proof. You got Dawson's documentation. You got Reeves' legal analysis. You're ready. Are you going to be okay? Doc says I got time. Not much, but enough. You go into that hearing tomorrow and you burn them down. Then you come visit me and tell me how it went. I'll be there. Good. And Jim? Yeah? Do what's right, even when it costs you everything. The line went dead. Harrigan stood alone in his dark house and felt the weight of 40 years settling on his shoulders. Tomorrow he would walk into a Senate hearing room and lay out evidence that would destroy powerful men. Men with resources and connections and no moral limits. He would be attacked, discredited, demolished. But 43 Marines were dead, and his son had almost become 44. And Sergeant Tommy Chen, dying in a hospital bed, had reminded him of the only lesson that mattered. Harrigan got dressed, put on his service dress blues, every ribbon earned, every medal justified. The uniform he'd worn with pride for 4 decades. He looked at himself in the mirror, saw an old man, gray hair, tired eyes, too many years in the fight. But he also saw a soldier who still knew what honor meant. He picked up the phone, called Michael. Son, tomorrow's going to be hard. They're going to come after me with everything they have. I need you to know, no matter what they say, I did this because it was right. I know, Dad. And if it all goes wrong, if I lose everything, I need you to finish it. Promise me. I promise. Good. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we go to war. Harrigan ended the call, stood alone in his house, felt the weight of what was coming. Then he thought about a desert in 1991, about being carried to safety, about learning that some things were worth fighting for, regardless of cost. Tomorrow he would walk into that hearing room and tell the truth, and let the chips fall where they may. The old soldier was ready for his last battle. The Senate hearing room felt like a cathedral built for judgment, high ceilings, dark wood panels, rows of seats that stretched back into shadows. Morning light filtered through tall windows, creating bars of gold across the floor. The air carried the weight of history and power and the particular silence that comes before storms. Harrigan sat at a witness table facing the dais where senators would sit in judgment. His dress blues felt stiff, unfamiliar somehow after weeks of civilian clothes and hospital visits and late nights hunched over evidence files. Every ribbon was aligned, every medal positioned exactly right, the uniform armor for a different kind of battle. To his right sat Pat Reeves in a dark suit, professional, composed, ready. To his left, an empty chair, Tommy Chen's chair. The old warrior was 3 miles away in a hospital bed with monitors beeping and nurses checking vitals and strict orders not to get excited or stressed or do anything that might trigger another cardiac event. The absence felt like an open wound. Behind Harrigan, the gallery was filling. Reporters, cameras, spectators. He spotted Michael in the 3rd row, still moving carefully because of his injuries, but present. Supporting his father, families of dead Marines scattered throughout, holding photos of sons and daughters who would never come home. Across the aisle sat Marcus Vaughn, expensive suit, perfect hair, a team of lawyers flanking him like a protective wall. He looked confident, almost bored, a man who'd weathered investigations before and emerged unscathed. Next to Vaughn was General Robert Kessler, full-dress uniform, chest full of ribbons that represented 3 decades of service, face expressionless, eyes straight ahead, not looking at Harrigan, deliberately not looking. They'd served together, bled together, saved each other's lives in places most Americans couldn't pronounce. Now they sat on opposite sides of a chasm that couldn't be bridged. The gavel came down at 100 sharp. Senator Catherine Morrison looked out over the chamber. 70 years old and carved from granite, former Army nurse who'd held dying boys in her arms and never forgot what it cost to send young men to war. This hearing of the Senate Armed Services Committee will come to order. Morrison's voice carried absolute authority. We are here to investigate serious allegations regarding Triton Defense systems and the procurement of body armor for United States Marine Corps personnel. Specifically allegations that defective equipment was knowingly provided, resulting in numerous casualties. She paused. Let that sink in. Before we begin testimony, I want to remind everyone present that these proceedings are under oath. Lying to Congress is a federal crime. I expect complete honesty and transparency. Her eyes swept across Vaughn and Kessler. The message was clear. The committee calls Colonel James Harrigan, United States Navy, retired. Harrigan stood, walked to the witness chair, raised his right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth? The whole truth and nothing but the truth? I do. He sat, faced the panel of senators arrayed before him, saw skepticism on some faces, interest on others. Morrison's expression was neutral, but her eyes were sharp. Colonel Harrigan, Morrison began. Please state your name and background for the record. Colonel James Harrigan, served 40 years in the United States Navy, SEAL teams, multiple combat deployments, most recently assigned to Pentagon logistics and procurement oversight. And what brings you before this committee today? Harrigan took a breath. My son, Captain Michael Harrigan, United States Marine Corps, was shot in the chest 3 weeks ago while deployed overseas. He survived by 2 centimeters. The body armor he was wearing, manufactured by Triton Defense systems, failed to stop a round it was rated to stop. I'm sorry to hear about your son. Is he recovering? Yes, ma'am. He's here today. Morrison glanced at Michael, nodded. Colonel, that's a serious allegation, body armor failure. But equipment sometimes fails in combat. What makes you believe this wasn't simply an isolated incident? Because it's not isolated. Harrigan pulled out a document, slid it across to the committee staff member who would distribute copies. This is a list of 68 confirmed incidents where Triton body armor failed under circumstances where it should have provided protection. 43 of those incidents resulted in fatalities. 25 resulted in serious injuries requiring medical evacuation. 68 incidents? A senator from Texas leaned forward. Over what time period? 18 months, since Triton's armor entered service. The chamber erupted in murmurs. Morrison's gavel came down hard. Order. She looked at Harrigan. Colonel, that's a significant number. Do you have documentation supporting these claims? Yes, ma'am. Harrigan nodded to Reeves, who began distributing thick folders. Medical reports, after-action reviews, casualty notifications, all confirmed through official channels. The senators flipped through pages, faces growing darker as they read. Senator Morrison, a voice called from the back. That's highly classified information. How did Colonel Harrigan obtain it? Vaughn's lead attorney, expensive suit, practiced outrage. Morrison's gaze could have stripped paint. The colonel used his authorized security clearance and official position to review procurement records, which is his job. Continue, Colonel Harrigan. Harrigan pressed on. Ma'am, the pattern is consistent across all incidents. Ceramic trauma plates shattering on first impact. Kevlar weaves separating. Structural failures that shouldn't occur in properly manufactured equipment. When I began investigating, I discovered something disturbing. What did you discover? The independent testing facility that certified Triton's armor is owned by a shell corporation. I traced that corporation through multiple layers. The ultimate owner is Marcus Vaughn. Every head in the room turned toward Vaughn. That's a damn lie, Vaughn said, half rising from his seat. Morrison's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Mr. Vaughn, you will have your opportunity to testify. Sit down and be silent or be removed. Vaughn sat, but his face was red, furious. Harrigan continued. I have documentation showing the ownership chain. The test facility that was supposed to provide independent verification was controlled by the company being tested. They certified their own equipment. How is that legal? Morrison asked. It's not, Reeves interjected. It violates federal acquisition regulations and constitutes fraud. What else did you find, Colonel? Harrigan pulled out more documents. The contract evaluation board that selected Triton had 7 members. 5 now work for companies doing business with Triton. 1 sits on Triton's board of directors. 1 retired and became Triton's vice president of government relations after closing 3 separate inspector general investigations into Triton's equipment. Morrison's expression was stone. You're alleging systemic corruption. I'm presenting evidence of systemic corruption, ma'am, and it goes deeper. Harrigan pulled out the crown jewel, the emails Dawson had provided. These are internal communications between Marcus Vaughn and General Robert Kessler. They show direct coordination on contract awards, discussions of how to avoid oversight, and references to payments. What kind of payments? General Kessler received $2.5 million over 3 years, paid to a shell company he controls, while he was actively overseeing the procurement process that awarded Triton a $2.3 billion contract. The chamber exploded. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, senators talking over each other. Kessler sat frozen, face pale, eyes straight ahead. Eyes. Morrison's gavel came down repeatedly. Order. Order in this chamber. It took 5 minutes to restore quiet. General Kessler, Morrison said, do you wish to respond to these allegations? Kessler stood slowly, looked at Morrison, then at Harrigan. Something passed between them. 30 years of brotherhood dying in real time. Senator, I invoke my right under the Fifth Amendment and respectfully decline to answer on grounds it may incriminate me. The room erupted again. A general, a decorated combat veteran, taking the fifth rather than answering questions about corruption. Morrison let the chaos run for a moment, let the impact sink in, then brought order back. Colonel Harrigan, she said, these are serious allegations supported by substantial evidence. But I need to ask, why you? Why take this on personally when you could have simply filed a report and walked away to retirement? Harrigan thought about Tommy Chen in a hospital bed, about Michael sitting in the gallery with scars that would last a lifetime, about 43 Marines who would never see another sunrise. Ma'am, in '91 I was wounded during Desert Storm. A sergeant named Thomas Chen carried me 4 miles through hostile territory to save my life. He taught me something that day. He taught me that doing what's right matters more than doing what's easy, that you don't abandon your brothers, that some things are worth fighting for regardless of cost. He paused, let the words settle. My son almost died because Marcus Vaughn chose profit over protection. 43 other sons did die, and I'll be damned if I let that stand just because fighting it might cost me my pension or my reputation or my peace. Those Marines trusted the equipment. They trusted the system. That trust was betrayed. Someone has to answer for that. The room was silent. Absolute. You could hear breathing. Even the reporters had stopped typing. Senator Morrison, a new voice called, "May I approach?" Everyone turned. An older man was standing in the back. 4 stars on his uniform, weathered face, command presence that filled the room. General Thomas Bradley, former Vice Chief of Staff of the Army, retired 2 years ago. Legend status. Morrison looked surprised. General Bradley, this is unexpected. Ma'am, I apologize for the interruption, but I have testimony relevant to these proceedings. You're not on the witness list. I know. But after reading about these hearings, I couldn't stay silent. I have information that corroborates Colonel Harrigan's allegations. Morrison glanced at her fellow senators, nodded. The witness is recognized. Please come forward and be sworn. Bradley walked down the aisle, ramrod straight despite his age, took the oath, sat in the witness chair with the bearing of a man who'd commanded armies. General Bradley, Morrison said, what brings you here today? Guilt, ma'am, and a need to set the record straight. The chamber leaned forward collectively. In '22, I was Vice Chief of Staff. Triton's bid came across my desk as part of the final approval process. I had concerns about their testing protocols. The numbers looked too good, too perfect. I requested independent verification. What happened? General Kessler assured me the tests were sound. He provided documentation. I trusted him. We'd served together. So I signed off on the contract. But 6 months later, field reports started showing failures. Not many at first, just a few incidents that could be explained as outliers. But the pattern kept growing. I ordered an internal investigation. Morrison's eyes narrowed. What did that investigation find? I don't know, because General Kessler shut it down. He came to me personally and said that questioning our equipment in the field would damage morale, that it would make our troops doubt their protection. He convinced me that the greater good required keeping quiet and working the problem internally. And did you work the problem internally? No, because shortly after that conversation, I retired. I left, and I told myself I'd done my duty, and whatever happened next wasn't my responsibility. Bradley's voice cracked slightly. I was wrong. I was a coward. I knew something was wrong, and I walked away because it was easier than fighting, because I didn't want to risk my legacy or my pension or my comfortable retirement. He looked directly at Harrigan. Colonel Harrigan had the courage I lacked. He risked everything to expose the truth. And I'm here today to tell you that his allegations are credible, that the corruption he describes matches what I witnessed, and that I am complicit in this failure. The silence was crushing. General Morrison said gently, "Are you saying you believe Triton knowingly provided defective equipment?" "Yes, ma'am. And I believe General Kessler facilitated it for personal profit. And I believe I enabled it by not pushing harder when I had the chance." Morrison sat back, looked at her fellow senators, then at Harrigan. then at Vaughn, who looked like he'd been hit with a hammer. "Mr. Vaughn," she said, "I think you'd better start explaining yourself." Vaughn stood, adjusted his tie, fell back on the prepared script his lawyers had crafted. "Senator, these allegations are a coordinated attack by disgruntled individuals who don't understand business realities. Yes, we've had some equipment failures. That's inevitable in manufacturing at scale. We're talking about a 0.006% failure rate. That's industry standard. That's acceptable." Acceptable? Morrison's voice could have cut glass. 43 dead Marines is acceptable? "Senator, I grieve for every loss. But the alternative is perfectionism that makes equipment so expensive we can't afford to field it. We saved the Department of Defense $400 million. That's $400 million that went to other critical needs. You saved money by cutting quality. We made smart business decisions. Triton operates in a competitive marketplace. We have to balance cost and performance." "At what price, Mr. Vaughn?" Morrison leaned forward. "How much is a Marine's life worth? You saved $340 per vest. Is that the going rate? $340 per life? That's not fair." "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" Morrison gestured to the gallery. "Those families back there, holding photos of their dead children. You want to explain to them how your profit margins justified their loss?" Vaughn's composure was cracking. "Senator, you're twisting my words. I'm reading your own emails, Mr. Vaughn." Morrison held up a document. Quote, "Ceramic composite grade B is sufficient for contract specs at 60% cost of grade A. Probability of field failure increases from 2% to 7%, but remains within acceptable risk parameters." End quote. "You knew the cheaper material would fail more often, and you used it anyway." "That's out of context." "Then provide the context." Vaughn looked at his lawyers. They whispered urgently. "Senator, my counsel advises me to invoke my Fifth Amendment rights at this time." Morrison smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "How convenient." She turned to Kessler. "General, would you like to reconsider your position?" Kessler sat silent, face pale, eyes straight ahead. "Very well," Morrison said. "This committee has heard sufficient evidence to warrant further action. I am recommending immediate criminal investigation of both Triton Defense Systems and General Robert Kessler. I am also recommending immediate recall and replacement of all Triton body armor currently in service." She paused. "Let that land. Furthermore, I am requesting the Secretary of Defense institute a comprehensive review of all defense procurement processes to identify and eliminate the kind of corruption we've witnessed today." The gavel came down. "This hearing stands in recess. We will reconvene tomorrow for additional testimony." The chamber erupted, reporters swarming, cameras flashing, lawyers huddling with clients. Harrigan sat still, felt the weight lifting. Not gone entirely, never gone entirely, but lighter. Reeves leaned close. "We did it, Jim." "Not yet, but we're close." Michael appeared, pushed through the crowd, reached his father and pulled him into a careful embrace. "Dad, I'm so proud of you." Harrigan held his son, felt the solidity of him. Alive, breathing. "Here. I did it for you, Mike. For you and all the others." "I know." They stood together while the chaos swirled around them. Father and son, both warriors, both wounded, both still standing. A hand fell on Harrigan's shoulder. He turned to find General Bradley. "Colonel," Bradley said, "you did what I should have done 2 years ago. Thank you." "General, you testified today. That took guts. Too little, too late. But maybe it'll make a difference." "It already has." Bradley nodded, extended his hand. Harrigan shook it. From the corner of his eye, Harrigan saw Kessler being let out by Pentagon security. No cuffs yet. Still technically a free man, but the walls were closing. Their eyes met across the room. 30 years of brotherhood, 30 years of shared sacrifice, ending in betrayal and broken trust. Kessler looked away first. Harrigan left the hearing room and stepped into harsh daylight. Reporters shouting questions, cameras in his face. He ignored them all, got into Reeves's car, and had her drive him straight to the hospital. Tommy Chen was awake, propped up in bed, oxygen line in his nose, heart monitor beeping steady but slow. "Well?" Chen's voice was weak, but his eyes were sharp. "How'd it go?" Harrigan sat in the chair beside the bed. Bradley showed up. "What?" Walked in, unannounced, and testified against Kessler. Confirmed everything, admitted he'd been complicit by staying silent. "Jesus," Chen smiled. "That's a 4-star general falling on a sword." Morrison recommended criminal investigations, full equipment recall, procurement process review. Kessler? Took the 5th. Smart. He's cooked. Yeah. And Vaughn? Same. Lawyered up. Took the 5th. But the evidence is overwhelming. The Justice Department will have to act. Chen closed his eyes, smiled. We did it, Jim. We actually did it. You did it, Tommy. You and me and Pat and Dawson. Team effort. Chen's eyes opened. Met Harrigan's. You remember what I told you? 1991. Do what's right even when it costs you. You did that, brother. You paid the price and you didn't back down. I'm proud of you. Harrigan felt his throat tighten. Tommy, I couldn't have done this without you. Sure you could have. But I'm glad I got to be part of it. One last mission with my brother. They sat in silence. Two old warriors at the end of a long campaign. The doctor says you'd need rest, Harrigan finally said. I'll rest when I'm dead, which according to these quacks is going to be sooner rather than later. Don't talk like that. Why not? It's true. Chen's expression was peaceful. But Jim, I'm okay with it. I got to do something that mattered. I got to fight beside you one more time. I got to know that David and Michael and all the others who come after will be safer because of what we did. Tommy, don't get sentimental on me now. You got work to do. This ain't over yet. Vaughn and Kessler still need to be prosecuted. The system still needs fixing. You can't quit now. I know. Good. Now get out of here. Go home. Get some sleep. Come back tomorrow and tell me what happened next. Harrigan stood, gripped Chen's hand. The old sergeant's grip was weak but steady. See you tomorrow, Tommy. Count on it. Harrigan left the hospital and drove home through afternoon traffic. His phone was blowing up with messages. News outlets wanting interviews. Veterans groups offering support. Old colleagues split between congratulations and accusations. He ignored them all. At home, he found Michael waiting. His son had picked up food, Chinese, their old tradition from when Michael was a kid. They ate in comfortable silence, then sat on the back porch as the sun went down. Dad, Michael said, what happens now? Justice Department opens investigations. Grand juries get convened, eventually trials. How long? Months, maybe years. These things take time, and you'll have to testify again. Probably. They'll keep attacking you. Let them. Michael looked at his father. Dad, you gave up everything for this. Your retirement, your peace. Was it worth it? Harrigan thought about 43 Marines who would never come home. About Tommy Chen dying in a hospital bed but dying proud. About doing what was right even when it cost everything. Yeah, son, it was worth it. The next morning brought news. Justice Department announcing formal criminal investigation into Triton Defense systems and associated individuals. FBI executing search warrants at Triton headquarters. General Kessler placed under house arrest pending court-martial proceedings. The dominoes were falling. Day 3, the Marine Corps issued a service-wide equipment recall. All Triton body armor to be replaced within 90 days. Interim equipment from vetted manufacturers to be expedited. Day 5, Marcus Vaughn was arrested. Perp walked in front of cameras, charged with fraud, corruption, and negligent homicide. 43 counts, one for each dead Marine. Day 7, additional charges filed against Kessler. Bribery, conspiracy, dereliction of duty. Day 10, Harrigan visited Tommy Chen and found the old sergeant sleeping. Peaceful. The nurse said he'd been stable but tiring easily. Harrigan sat beside the bed, waited for Chen to wake. He didn't. The monitor started alarming at 13:47 hours. Nurses rushed in. Doctor called code. CPR initiated. Harrigan was pushed aside, stood against the wall watching them fight to save his friend's life. They worked for 23 minutes. At 14:10 hours, the doctor called it. Thomas Chen, age 74. Sergeant Major, United States Army, retired. Dead of cardiac arrest. Harrigan stood alone in the hallway outside the room, numbness spreading through his chest. Tommy was gone. The man who'd carried him through the desert, who'd taught him what honor meant, who'd stood beside him in one final mission. Gone. The funeral was held at Arlington National Cemetery. Full military honors, flag-draped coffin, 21-gun salute, a bugler playing taps that echoed across fields of white headstones. Harrigan stood at attention in his dress blues, tears running down his face, not bothering to hide them. David Chen, Tommy's grandson, stood beside him. Young Marine, alive because of what they'd accomplished. After the service, David approached Harrigan. Sir, my grandfather left something for you. He handed over an envelope, sealed, Harrigan's name written in Tommy's distinctive scrawl. Harrigan opened it later, alone, read the single-page letter. Jim, if you're reading this, I'm gone. Don't be sad. I gotta go out doing something that mattered. You kept your promise from 91. You did what was right even when it cost you everything. That's all any man can do. Take care of Michael. Take care of yourself. And remember that the mission isn't over. You still got work to do. Stay frosty, brother. Tommy. Harrigan folded the letter carefully, put it in his desk drawer next to Sarah's photo. Two old warriors gone, both taken too soon, both leaving holes that would never quite heal. But the work continued. The trials took 8 months to get to court. Vaughn first. Federal courthouse in D.C., packed gallery, media circus. Harrigan testified for 2 days, laid out the evidence, explained the corruption, answered every question with precision and clarity. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Marcus Vaughn, former Army colonel, CEO of Triton Defense Systems, sentenced to 43 consecutive life terms, one for each Marine his greed had killed. Kessler's court-martial followed 3 months later. Military tribunal, closed proceedings, but the verdict was public. Guilty, dishonorable discharge, stripped of rank and pension, 25 years in federal prison. Harrigan attended both sentencings, sat in the gallery, watched these men who'd chosen profit over honor face the consequences of their choices. Felt no satisfaction, no joy, just the quiet certainty that justice, however delayed, had finally arrived. The final piece came a year after the initial hearing. Congress passed the Defense Procurement Integrity Act. Mandatory independent testing, strict conflict of interest rules, whistleblower protections, criminal penalties for knowing provision of defective equipment. Senator Morrison invited Harrigan to the signing ceremony, President making speeches about accountability and protecting our troops. Afterward, Morrison pulled Harrigan aside. "Colonel, none of this happens without you. You know that, right? It wasn't just me, ma'am. It was Tommy and Pat and Dawson and everyone who had the courage to stand up. But you started it. You risked everything. Someone had to." Morrison smiled. "That's what makes you one of the good ones, Colonel. The world needs more men like you. The world needs men who do the right thing even when it's hard. That's all." Harrigan left Washington that day and drove home to Arlington. Small house, too quiet, but his. Michael was waiting. The boy had medically retired from the Marines, working now with a veterans advocacy group, fighting for better equipment and support. Following in his father's footsteps in a different way, they had dinner together, talked about small things, Michael's work, Harrigan's plans, normal things, peaceful things. Later, Harrigan stood at his window looking out at the night sky, thought about Sarah, about Tommy, about all the people who'd shaped him into the man he'd become. Thought about 43 Marines who would never see another sunset, but whose deaths had finally meant something, had changed a system, had made future service members safer. His phone buzzed, text from David Chen. "Sir, wanted you to know, I'm re-enlisting. 4 more years. Grandpa would want me to serve." Harrigan smiled. Type back. He'd be proud. "So am I. Stay safe, Marine." He put the phone down, looked at the photo on his desk. Sarah smiling. Forever young, forever gone. "I did it, sweetheart. I kept my promise to Michael. I made sure no other family has to go through what we did. I hope that counts for something." The photo didn't answer, but Harrigan felt a measure of peace settling over him. He'd fought his last battle, paid his dues, done what was right even when it cost him everything. Now finally he could rest. The old soldiers' war was over. The courtroom was empty now, chairs pushed back at odd angles, papers scattered across the defense table where Vaughn's lawyers had packed up in hurried silence. Afternoon lights slanted through tall windows, painting everything gold and shadow. Harrigan sat alone in the gallery, had been sitting there for 20 minutes since the bailiff cleared the room. Just him and the silence and the weight of what had just happened. 43 consecutive life sentences. The judge had been methodical, reading each count, each name, each Marine who died because Marcus Vaughn chose profit over protection. With every name, Vaughn had grown smaller in his chair, shrinking under the accumulated weight of his crimes. Lance Corporal David Jensen, age 19. Private First Class Marcus Williams, age 20. Corporal Sarah Chen, age 22. On and on. 43 names, 43 lives, 43 families shattered. The judge's voice had been flat, emotionless, but each name landed like a hammer blow, building, compounding, until the full scope of the destruction was laid bare for everyone to see. Vaughn had cried, actual tears running down his face, as the reality of spending the rest of his life in prison settled over him like a shroud. His lawyers had tried to maintain composure, failed. Even they looked shaken by the magnitude of the sentence. Harrigan had felt nothing, no satisfaction, no joy, just a hollow certainty that justice, however delayed, had finally arrived. He stood now, joints protesting, 63 years old and feeling every one of them. Walked out of the courthouse into late autumn air that carried the promise of winter. Michael was waiting on the steps, still moved carefully because the injuries would never fully heal, but standing, alive, here. "It's done," Harrigan said. "I heard." Michael fell into step beside his father. 43 life sentences. "He'll die in prison." "Good." They walked in silence, father and son. Both warriors, both carrying scars that would never quite fade. "Dad," Michael said eventually, "what now?" Harrigan didn't have an answer. For a year, he'd been focused on the mission, the investigation, the hearings, the trials, every waking moment devoted to bringing down the men who'd betrayed their trust. Now that it was over, he felt adrift, purposeless. "I don't know, son. You should rest. You've earned it." Rest, the word felt foreign. Harrigan had been in motion for 40 years. Deployments, missions, training, even retirement had turned into a war against corruption. He didn't know how to be still. Maybe. They reached Harrigan's truck. Old F-150 with 200,000 miles and a door that squeaked when it opened. Reliable, honest. The kind of vehicle that didn't pretend to be anything other than what it was. Michael gripped his father's shoulder. "Dad, I need to tell you something." "What?" "I'm scared for you." Harrigan looked at his son, saw genuine concern in those eyes. "What do you mean?" "You've been running on anger and purpose for a year. Now that it's over, now that you've won, I'm scared you're going to crash, that you won't know what to do with yourself." "I'll figure it out." "Will you?" Michael's grip tightened. "Mom's gone. Tommy's gone. The mission's complete. What's left?" The question hung in the cold air between them. "You," Harrigan said finally. "You're what's left. You and whatever time I have remaining and trying to make that time count for something. Then start by taking care of yourself." Michael let go, stepped back. "Come have dinner with me tonight. Sarah's cooking. She wants to meet the man who saved her husband's life." Sarah, Michael's girlfriend. The woman who'd stood by him through the recovery, through the surgeries and physical therapy and night terrors. Harrigan had met her once. Briefly, she'd struck him as solid, real. "I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding. You're family. Come." "All right, what time?" 6. "And Dad, don't bring anything. Just bring yourself." Harrigan drove home. Small house in Arlington. Same house he'd shared with Sarah before cancer took her. Same rooms filled with memories and ghosts in the accumulated weight of a life lived in service. He sat at his desk, looked at the stack of letters that had arrived over the past weeks. Some were from families of the 43, thanking him, telling him their sons and daughters hadn't died in vain. Others were from active duty Marines, expressing gratitude that someone had finally stood up for them. One letter stood out, handwritten on nice stationery. He opened it. "Colonel Harrigan, you don't know me. My name is Jennifer Martinez. My son, Corporal Luis Martinez, died 8 months ago when his vest failed. I testified at one of the preliminary hearings, but we never spoke directly. I wanted you to know that what you did matters, not just because it brought justice, but because it showed my daughter that good men still exist, that honor still means something, that her brother's death wasn't meaningless. Luis wanted to be a teacher. He joined the Marines to pay for college. He had 2 years left on his enlistment. He would have been 24 next month. Because of you, because of your courage to fight when fighting was hard, Luis's death led to change. The new procurement laws will save lives. My son's life purchased something real. Thank you for being the man you are. Thank you for not walking away when walking away would have been easier." With deepest gratitude, Jennifer Martinez. Harrigan read the letter 3 times, felt something breaking loose in his chest. Some dam that had been holding back a year's worth of grief and exhaustion and the crushing weight of responsibility. He put his head in his hands and cried, not quiet tears, full body sobs that shook him like a physical force, crying for Luis Martinez and the other 42, crying for Tommy Chen, crying for Sarah, crying for the boy he'd been in 1991 and the old man he'd become, crying because it was over and he'd survived and the cost had been so goddamn high. He cried until he had nothing left, until his eyes were raw and his throat was sore and the house was dark around him. Then he stood, washed his face, put on clean clothes, and drove to his son's apartment for dinner. Sarah answered the door, Michael's Sarah, 28 years old, bright eyes, warm smile, the kind of woman who radiated competence and kindness in equal measure. Colonel Harrigan, she extended her hand. I've heard so much about you. Just Jim, please. And I've heard you've been taking good care of my son. Someone has to. She grinned. Come in, dinner's almost ready. The apartment was small but comfortable. Photos on the walls, books on shelves, the lived-in feel of a place that was actually a home rather than just a space to sleep. Michael appeared from the kitchen, beer in hand, offered one to Harrigan. Thanks. They sat in the living room while Sarah finished cooking, made small talk, carefully avoiding the heavy subjects that loomed between them. Then Sarah called them to dinner, and they sat around a small table laden with pot roast and vegetables and homemade bread that filled the apartment with the smell of comfort and normalcy. This is wonderful, Harrigan said after the first bite. My grandmother's recipe. Sarah smiled. Michael says you like traditional cooking. I do. Reminds me of my mother. She passed when I was young, but I remember her pot roast. They ate, talked about small things, Sarah's work as a nurse, Michael's new position with the Veterans Advocacy Group, plans for the holidays. Normal conversation, the kind Harrigan hadn't experienced in over a year. After dinner, Michael and Sarah cleaned up while Harrigan sat on the balcony. Small space, view of a parking lot, but quiet, peaceful. Michael joined him, handed him a fresh beer. She's good for you, Harrigan said. I know. Michael sat. I'm thinking about asking her to marry me. You should. You think? I think life's too short to wait. I think if you found someone who makes you want to be better, you hold on to that. That's what Mom did for you, wasn't it? Yeah, Harrigan took a long pull of beer. Your mother saw the man I could be before I saw it myself. She believed in me when I was just an angry kid trying to prove something. She made me want to be worth her faith. I miss her. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence. Father and son, two generations of warriors learning how to live in peace. Dad, Michael said eventually, what are you going to do now? I got an offer. Teaching position at West Point. Ethics and leadership. You gonna take it? I don't know. Part of me thinks I should just retire. Buy a cabin somewhere. Fish. Read. Let the world move on without me. And the other part? The other part thinks maybe I've got something left to give. Maybe there are young officers who need to learn what I learned. That honor matters. That doing right costs, but it's worth the cost. You should do it. Michael looked at his father. You're not meant to sit idle, Dad. You're meant to fight. Maybe not with weapons anymore, but fight for what matters. Maybe. The invitation came 3 days later. Official letterhead. United States Military Academy at West Point. Department of Military Leadership. Colonel Harrigan, we would be honored if you would consider joining our faculty as an instructor in military ethics and decision-making. Your recent actions in exposing corruption within defense procurement serve as a powerful example of moral courage under pressure. We believe your experience and perspective would be invaluable to the cadets who will become tomorrow's military leaders. The position would begin with the spring semester. Compensation and benefits are outlined in the attached materials. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to discuss this opportunity. Respectfully, Brigadier General Marcus Stone, Dean of the Academic Board. Harrigan read the letter twice, looked at the compensation package. It was good, fair, more than he'd expected. He called Pat Reeves. Jim, she answered on the second ring, how are you holding up? Okay, better. I wanted to run something by you. Talk to me. He explained the West Point offer, the teaching position, the chance to shape young officers. Reeves was quiet for a moment. Then she said, you should do it. You think? I know, Jim. You've spent a year tearing down a corrupt system. Now you have a chance to build a better one, to teach the next generation what you know. That's not just a job. That's legacy. Legacy. The word resonated. All right, I'll accept. Good. And Jim, take care of yourself. You've earned some peace. Working on it. He accepted the position that afternoon, started preparing to move. West Point was 2 hours north. He'd need to find a place, pack up the house, sort through 40 years of accumulated memories. The process took 2 months, sorting Sarah's things, deciding what to keep and what to let go. Each item a small grief, each decision a step toward whatever came next. Michael helped, spent weekends boxing up books and photos and the physical remnants of a life. They didn't talk much, just worked. Let the physical labor carry the emotional weight they couldn't quite voice. One afternoon, Michael found a box in the back of the closet, opened it, pulled out a faded photograph. Dad, when was this taken? Harrigan looked, saw himself at 29, younger than seemed possible, standing with Sergeant Tommy Chen in desert fatigues, both of them sandy and exhausted and grinning like idiots. Desert Storm, 1991. Right after Chen carried me out of that firefight. You look like a kid. I was a kid. Didn't know anything. Thought I was tough and ready. Took Tommy to show me what being a soldier really meant. Michael studied the photo. What did he teach you? That doing right matters more than doing easy. That you don't abandon your brothers. That honor isn't something you talk about, it's something you live. He lived that, didn't he? Right up to the end. Harrigan took the photo, looked at his young face, at Tommy's crooked smile, every day of his life, even when it cost him. That's who I want to be. You already are, son. You proved that. They packed the photo carefully, along with Tommy's final letter, along with the medals and ribbons and accumulated evidence of a life spent in service. The move happened in early January. Cold morning, gray sky, threatening snow. Michael and Sarah helped load the truck. Harrigan took one last walk through the empty house. Rooms that had held so much life now echoed with absence. He stood in the bedroom he'd shared with Sarah, remembered her laugh, her touch, the way she'd curl against him in the early morning darkness. I'm moving on, sweetheart. Not forgetting, never forgetting, but moving on. I hope that's okay. The silence didn't answer, but Harrigan felt a measure of peace settling over him. West Point was everything he'd hoped and feared. Historic campus, stone buildings that had stood for over 200 years. Young cadets moving with purpose and discipline, the weight of tradition in every corner. His quarters were small but sufficient. Officer housing on the edge of campus, view of the Hudson River. Quiet, peaceful. The teaching started slowly. One class, Ethics 401, 25 cadets, all seniors, all about to graduate and take their places as second lieutenants in a military that would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Harrigan stood in front of the class that first day, looked at their young faces, saw himself at their age, confident, certain, unaware of how much they didn't know. My name is Colonel Harrigan. I'm here to teach you about ethics and moral decision-making. But I'm not going to do it with textbooks and theory. I'm going to do it with real cases. Real situations where good people had to make hard choices. The cadets sat straighter, paying attention now. How many of you have heard about the Triton Defense scandal? Every hand went up. Good. Then you know that sometimes the biggest threats to our military don't come from enemies with guns. They come from people wearing our uniform, people who put personal gain above duty, who choose profit over protection. He paused. Let that sink in. I'm going to tell you a story about 43 Marines who died because powerful men made immoral choices, about the people who exposed that corruption, and about what it cost them. For the next hour, Harrigan laid out the case, not from written notes, from memory, from lived experience. He told them about Michael's injury, about Tommy's sacrifice, about the choice between retiring quietly and fighting a system that seemed unbeatable. The cadets didn't move, didn't whisper, didn't check their phones. They sat transfixed as Harrigan walked them through every decision point, every moment where the right choice and the easy choice diverged. When he finished, a young woman raised her hand. Cadet Mitchell, top of her class, bound for the Army. Sir, what would you say to someone who's afraid that doing the right thing will destroy their career? Harrigan looked at her, saw genuine concern, real fear that the ideals they were taught here might not survive contact with the real world. I'd say your career isn't worth as much as you think. You'll be an officer for maybe 20 or 30 years if you're lucky, but you'll be the person you are for the rest of your life, and you have to live with the choices you make. He walked closer to her. Cadet, someday you're going to face a decision where doing right costs you. Maybe it costs your promotion, maybe it costs your position, maybe it costs relationships and opportunities and the easy path forward. And in that moment, you'll have to choose who you want to be. What did you choose, sir? Everything. I chose to risk everything, and I'd do it again. The room was silent. Another hand? Cadet Rodriguez, infantry bound. Sir, do you regret it? Harrigan thought about Tommy Chen's funeral, about the year of attacks and character assassination, about the nights he'd sat alone wondering if the cost was too high. No, I don't regret standing up. I regret that I had to. I regret that the system was so broken that it took a year-long fight to get basic accountability. But the act of fighting? No, that I'll never regret. The semester progressed, each week a new case study, each lesson drawn from real experience. Harrigan taught them about Abu Ghraib, about My Lai, about the small decisions that led to large catastrophes, about the courage it took to say no when everyone else was saying yes. And slowly he began to heal. Teaching gave him purpose. The cadets gave him hope. Watching them grapple with difficult questions, seeing them develop the moral framework they'd need in the years ahead. It felt like progress, like building something instead of tearing down. Michael visited monthly, sometimes with Sarah. They'd have dinner, talk about work and life in the slow process of becoming who they were meant to be. On one visit, Michael had news. Dad, Sarah and I are getting married. Harrigan felt joy bloom in his chest, genuine happiness for the first time in longer than he could remember. That's wonderful, son. When? June. Small ceremony, just family and close friends. And Dad, I want you to be my best man. I'd be honored. They planned the wedding over the next months. Simple affair. Garden ceremony at a small venue outside D.C. 50 guests. Traditional vows. Harrigan stood beside his son as Michael married the woman who'd helped him heal. Watched them exchange rings and promises. Saw the future opening before them like a flower. At the reception, David Chen approached. Tommy's grandson, young Marine, alive and thriving. Sir, I wanted to thank you for everything. You don't need to thank me. Yes, sir, I do. My grandfather died believing he'd done something that mattered, that his last mission counted. You gave him that. Tommy gave himself that. I just fought beside him. He talked about you all the time. Said you were the best officer he'd ever served with. Tommy was the best soldier I ever knew. David nodded, smiled. Sir, I'm re-enlisting, another 4 years. Command approved me for scout sniper training. Your grandfather would be proud. I hope so. I'm doing it for him and for all the others. After the reception, Harrigan drove back to West Point, alone in his truck, radio playing soft country music. Stars bright overhead. He thought about Sarah, his Sarah. Wished she could have seen Michael get married. Wished she could have met the woman who'd won their son's heart. But he felt her presence, in the joy of the day, in Michael's smile, in the future stretching out before them. You'd like her, sweetheart. She's good for him, makes him laugh, makes him want to be better, like you did for me. The summer semester brought new challenges. Advanced course, smaller class. Officers already commissioned who were being groomed for command positions. These students were harder to reach, more cynical. They'd been in the system long enough to see its flaws, to understand that idealism often lost to expediency. Harrigan adjusted his approach. Less lecturing, more discussion. Putting them in scenarios with no clear right answer and forcing them to defend their choices. One afternoon, a captain challenged him. Sir, with respect, the Triton case was obvious. Clear corruption, clear moral failing. But most ethical dilemmas aren't that clean. Most of the time, it's shades of gray. How do you navigate that? Harrigan leaned against his desk. You're right. Most choices aren't between good and evil. They're between competing goods or different kinds of bad. But that doesn't mean ethics don't matter. Then how do you decide? You ask yourself what kind of officer you want to be. What kind of leader? Then you make the choice that aligns with that vision, even when it costs you. And if you're wrong, then you're wrong. But at least you're wrong because you tried to do right, not because you took the easy path. The captain nodded slowly, processing. Let me tell you something, Harrigan continued. The hardest choices I ever made weren't the dramatic ones. They were the small ones. The daily decisions to speak up or stay silent, to take the harder right or the easier wrong. Those small choices accumulated over 40 years into the person I became. He looked around the room. Every one of you will face those small choices, and they'll define you more than any single dramatic moment. Choose carefully. The semester ended. Harrigan's first full year of teaching complete. He'd reached over 100 cadets and officers, planted seeds that might take years to grow. The academy offered him a 3-year contract extension. He accepted. On a warm afternoon in late August, Harrigan sat on his small porch overlooking the Hudson. Reading, just reading, a luxury he'd rarely allowed himself during his active duty years. His phone rang. Pat Reeves. Jim, I wanted to let you know. General Bradley's foundation just announced their first round of grants. 43 scholarships for children of fallen service members. Full ride, undergraduate and graduate school. That's wonderful. They're calling them the Triton Scholarships. Named for the 43. Bradley wanted to make sure those deaths led to something positive. Harrigan felt a lump forming in his throat. That's good. That's really good. Jim, you did that. You made that possible. We did that, all of us. Take the credit, you stubborn old man. You earned it. They talked for a while about Pat's work, about the ongoing implementation of the new procurement regulations, about the slow process of changing a system. After hanging up, Harrigan sat in the fading light and thought about legacy. 43 Marines were still dead. Nothing could change that, but their deaths had led to reforms that would save countless others, had led to scholarships that would change lives, had led to a heightened awareness that equipment quality was literally life and death. Something from nothing, light from darkness, the best anyone could hope for. That evening, Michael called. "Dad, Sarah's pregnant." The words hung in the air, bright, shining, full of promise. "Mike, that's incredible. When?" "Early spring. We just found out yesterday." "How's Sarah feeling?" "Terrified, excited, all of it." "And you?" "Same." Michael laughed. "Dad, I'm going to be a father." "You're going to be a great father." "I hope so. I want to be the kind of dad you were. The kind who shows up, who fights for what matters, who teaches their kid what honor means." "You'll be better than me, son. You'll learn from my mistakes." After the call, Harrigan walked down to the river, stood on the bank watching the water flow past. Constant, eternal, indifferent to human drama. He was going to be a grandfather. The thought filled him with an emotion he couldn't quite name. Hope, maybe. The sense that life continued, that the story went on past his own chapter. Somewhere Tommy Chen would be grinning. Somewhere Sarah would be crying happy tears. Somewhere the universe was reminding him that endings were just new beginnings in disguise. Harrigan stood by the river until the sun set and the stars came out. Stood there and felt the weight of the past year lifting. Not gone, never gone, but lighter. He'd fought his war, paid his price, done what needed doing. Now he got to live. The old soldier had earned his peace. Spring came to West Point like a promise kept. Ice breaking on the Hudson. Buds appearing on trees that had stood bare and skeletal through a long winter. Cadets shedding their heavy coats and moving across campus with the particular energy that comes when the world starts breathing again. Harrigan stood at his classroom window watching the river flow past. 3 years since the trials. 3 years since Vaughn had been led away in chains. 3 years since he'd started this new chapter of teaching young officers what it meant to serve with honor. The time had moved strangely. Some days felt like decades. Others passed in heartbeats. But the work had been good, satisfying in ways he hadn't expected. Watching cadets wrestle with difficult questions, seeing them develop the moral framework they'd need when the easy answers ran out. Behind him, 20 cadets filed into the classroom. Final session of the semester. Last chance to impart whatever wisdom he'd accumulated over 4 decades in uniform. "Morning, Colonel." Cadet Johnson, top student, headed for Army Rangers. "Morning. Everyone take a seat." They settled. Notebooks open. Pens ready. These kids had been born after the Gulf War, had grown up in a world defined by Afghanistan and Iraq, knew nothing but conflict and sacrifice and the particular weight that came from serving during endless deployments. "Today we're going to talk about legacy," Harrigan began. "What you leave behind, what your service means after you're gone." He pulled up a photo on the projector. Sergeant Tommy Chen, middle-aged and grinning in desert fatigues. "This is the man who'd have taught me what it means to be a soldier. He carried me 4 miles through hostile territory when leaving me would have been easier. He taught me that doing right matters more than doing easy. And 33 years later, when I needed him most, he stood beside me one final time." The cadets leaned forward. "Tommy died 3 years ago. Heart gave out after we'd exposed the corruption that killed 43 Marines. He died knowing he had done something that mattered, that his last mission counted." Harrigan paused. "Let them sit with that. Here's what I want you to understand. Legacy isn't about monuments or medals. It's about the people you touch, the lessons you teach, the example you set. Tommy's legacy lives in me, in his grandson David who serves today, in every Marine who wears armor that works because we fought to fix a broken system." He advanced to the next slide. Photo of the memorial at Arlington. 43 names carved in stone. These Marines didn't choose to become symbols. They were just doing their jobs, trusting their equipment, trusting the system. That trust was betrayed, but their deaths led to reforms that will save countless others. That's legacy, something from nothing, light from darkness. A hand went up. Cadet Mitchell, going Air Force, planning to fly. "Sir, how do you deal with the weight of that, knowing that people died to create change?" Harrigan looked at her, saw the genuine struggle in her eyes, the burden that came from understanding the cost of progress. "You carry it," he said simply. "You carry it, and you make sure their sacrifice means something. You live in a way that honors what they paid for, and you pass those lessons forward so the next generation doesn't have to learn them the hard way. Another hand, Rodriguez, Marine Corps bound. Sir, do you think about them, the 43? Every day. Sometimes it's just a flash, a name, a face from a photo their family sent me. Sometimes it's more. I'll be teaching a class and I'll think about how Corporal Martinez wanted to be a teacher. Or I'll see a young father with his kid and remember that Lance Corporal Jensen never got to meet his daughter. How do you handle that? By making it count. By teaching you so maybe you'll be the officer who speaks up when something's wrong, who fights the system when the system needs fighting, who refuses to let convenience override conscience. The class continued. Questions and answers, stories and lessons, the accumulated wisdom of 40 years distilled into teachable moments. When it ended, the cadets filed out slowly. Several stopped to shake his hand. Thank him. Tell him the class had changed how they thought about service. After they left, Harrigan sat alone in the empty classroom. Felt the familiar satisfaction of work well done, of seeds planted that might take years to bloom. His phone buzzed. Michael. Dad, you free this weekend? Depends. What's happening? Sarah and I want you to come down. There's someone we want you to meet. Someone? Your granddaughter. The words hit him like a physical force. She's here? Born yesterday. 6 pounds, 8 ounces. Perfect. Dad, she's perfect. Harrigan felt tears welling. Didn't fight them. How's Sarah? Exhausted, amazing. Already a natural. Dad, you need to come meet her. I'll be there tomorrow. He drove down the next morning. Spring sunshine, windows open, radio playing classic country, the world bright and new and full of possibilities. Michael and Sarah lived in a small house in Alexandria now. White picket fence, actual white picket fence like something from a Norman Rockwell painting. Harrigan pulled into the driveway and sat for a moment, gathering himself. Then Michael was out of the door. Tired eyes, massive grin, moving like a man who'd just witnessed a miracle. They embraced, long and hard. Congratulations, son. Come meet her. Inside, the house smelled like baby powder and coffee and the particular exhaustion that comes from new parenthood. Sarah sat in a rocking chair by the window, holding a small bundle wrapped in a pink blanket. She looked up as they entered, smiled. Colonel Harrigan. Just Jim, please. Jim, come meet your granddaughter. Harrigan approached slowly, looked down at the tiny face. Eyes closed, impossibly small. Perfect. Her name is Sarah Elizabeth Harrigan, Michael said softly. Sarah after her mother and grandmother. Elizabeth after Tommy Chen's wife. The gesture broke something open in Harrigan's chest. Tommy would have loved that. We thought he should be remembered. Michael's voice was thick. He was family too. Can I hold her? Of course. Sarah placed the baby in his arms. So light, so fragile. Harrigan looked down at this new life and felt the weight of generations settling on his shoulders. Hello, Sarah Elizabeth. I'm your grandfather. I'm going to tell you stories about your great-grandmother, about your father when he was young, about a man named Tommy Chen who taught me what honor means. The baby yawned, tiny mouth opening, then settled back to sleep. She looks like her mother, Harrigan said. Thank God, Michael laughed. One of me is enough. They sat together. 3 generations in one room. 4 if you counted the sleeping infant. Harrigan held his granddaughter and felt time compress. Remembered holding Michael the same way 31 years ago. Sarah beside him. Both of them terrified and amazed in equal measure. Life continuing. The story moving forward, his chapter ending, but new ones beginning. That weekend stretched into 3 days. Harrigan helped where he could, made coffee, held the baby so Michael and Sarah could sleep. Sat in the quiet hours before dawn, feeding little Sarah Elizabeth and talking to her about the world she'd inherited. You're going to grow up in interesting times, he told her during one of those early morning sessions. The world's complicated, full of good people and bad people, and a whole lot of folks in between. Your job is to figure out who you want to be. The baby made small noises, not quite awake, not quite asleep. Your father is a good man. He'll teach you right from wrong. And when the world tries to tell you that right is too hard or too costly, you remember that some things are worth fighting for. You remember that honor matters, that doing right counts even when nobody's watching. Michael appeared at the doorway, watched his father holding his daughter. She likes you. She tolerates me. There's a difference. Michael sat down beside them. Dad, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you have regrets? About? Everything. The investigation, the trials, walking away from retirement, fighting instead of resting. Harrigan thought about it. Really thought. about the question and the price, and the year of hell that had nearly broken him. No, he said finally. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that the system was so broken it took a war to fix it. But the act of fighting? No, that I'll never regret. Even though it cost you? Especially because it cost me. Because if I'd walked away, if I'd chosen comfort over conscience, I couldn't look you in the eye, couldn't hold this baby and tell her stories about honor and duty. The cost was high, but it bought something real. What did it buy? Change, reform, lives saved, and the knowledge that when it mattered most, I stood up. Michael nodded, absorbing that. Son, someday you're going to face a choice between doing what's easy and doing what's right, and you're going to be scared. Scared of the cost, scared of what it might take. But you're going to choose right anyway, because that's who you are. That's who I raised you to be. How do you know? Because you already did it. When you told me to keep fighting even though it meant I might lose everything, when you supported me instead of asking me to quit, you already made the hard choice. I was scared. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing right anyway. They sat in the pre-dawn quiet, father and son, the baby sleeping between them. 3 generations connected by blood and something deeper than blood. The weeks turned to months. Harrigan returned to teaching. The semester ended. A new one began. He taught more cadets, told more stories, planted more seeds. In June, he received an invitation. White card, gold lettering. The Secretary of Defense requests your presence at a ceremony honoring those who died due to defective equipment and those who fought to prevent future tragedies. The ceremony was held at Arlington. Warm afternoon, cloudless sky. A crowd gathered before a new memorial. Black granite, names carved deep. Harrigan stood in the second row, Michael beside him, Pat Reeves on his other side. In front of them sat the families of the 43. Parents who'd lost children, spouses who'd lost partners, children who'd grown up without fathers or mothers. The Secretary of Defense spoke about sacrifice, about the debt the nation owed to those who served, about the importance of ensuring that trust wasn't betrayed. Then Senator Morrison took the podium, 3 years older but still carrying herself like the warrior she'd been. Today we honor 43 Marines who died not in combat against our enemies, but because of failures within our own system. Their deaths were preventable, inexcusable, and yet from that tragedy came reform. She gestured to the memorial behind her. These names are carved in stone so we never forget. So every officer who visits Arlington will see them and remember that equipment quality is life and death, that cutting corners kills, that honor demands we protect those who protect us. Morrison paused, looked directly at Harrigan. But we also honor those who fought for these fallen warriors. Colonel James Harrigan, Major Patricia Reeves, Captain Eric Dawson, and Sergeant Major Thomas Chen, who gave his life in service one final time. The crowd applauded. Harrigan felt his face flush, uncomfortable with the attention. Colonel Harrigan exposed systemic corruption at great personal cost. He risked his career, his reputation, his peace. He did it because 43 Marines deserved justice, because his son deserved to serve without fear, because doing right mattered more than doing easy. Morrison stepped down from the podium, walked directly to Harrigan, extended her hand. Thank you, Colonel. On behalf of a grateful nation. They shook. Her grip was firm, steady. After the ceremony, families approached, thanked him, shared stories of the sons and daughters memorialized in stone. Jennifer Martinez showed him a photo of her daughter graduating college on one of the scholarships Bradley's foundation had funded. Luis would be so proud, she said. You gave his death meaning. You gave it meaning, Harrigan replied, by being the mother you are, by raising your daughter to honor her brother. That evening, a small dinner was held. Just the key players, Morrison, Harrigan, Reeves, Dawson, General Bradley. They sat around a table in a private room. Good food, better conversation, the easy camaraderie that came from shared struggle. Bradley raised his glass. To Tommy Chen, who should be here tonight? To Tommy, they echoed, glasses raised. And to every Marine who trusted the system, Bradley continued, may we prove worthy of that trust. They drank, sat in comfortable silence. Jim, Bradley said, what are you doing with yourself these days? Teaching. West Point. Ethics and leadership. How's that going? Better than I expected. The kids are good, smart, idealistic. They give me hope. Hope. Reeves smiled. That's not something I expected to hear from you 3 years ago. 3 years ago, I was angry. Now I'm hopeful. That's progress. What changed, Dawson asked. He'd rebuilt his career, found a position in the private sector, made peace with the cost of speaking up. Perspective, Harrigan said. I spent a year focused on what was wrong, on the corruption and betrayal and cost. Now I get to focus on what's right, on young officers who want to serve honorably, on the reforms that are actually working, on my granddaughter who will grow up in a better system. You have a granddaughter. Morrison leaned forward. Tell me about her. Harrigan pulled out his phone, showed them photos. Sarah Elizabeth, 2 months old now, growing fast. She's beautiful, Reeves said. She's perfect. And she's the reason I fought. Not just for Michael, for her, for the world she'll inherit. That's legacy, Bradley said quietly. That's what it's all about. Later, Harrigan walked among the headstones. Found Tommy Chen's grave, simple marker. Name and dates and the words duty, honor, country. He knelt in the grass, placed his hand on the warm stone. Tommy, we did it. The memorial's up. The reforms are working. Your grandson is thriving. And I've got a granddaughter now, Sarah Elizabeth, named partly for your Beth. I wish you could meet her. The breeze rustled through the trees. Somewhere a bird called out. I'm teaching, Tommy, passing it forward like you did for me, telling them about honor and duty and the cost of doing right. Some of them get it, some don't, but I keep trying. He sat there for a long time, just sat, connected to the earth and the silence in the accumulated weight of all the lives represented here. Finally, he stood, saluted, walked back through rows of white markers toward his truck. Michael was waiting by the memorial, holding Sarah Elizabeth. Thought you might want company. Harrigan took his granddaughter, held her up to see the wall of names. Sarah Elizabeth, these are heroes. They died serving their country. Your great-grandfather fought to make sure their deaths meant something, and he won. The baby gurgled, reached tiny hands toward the polished stone. Someday you'll understand, Harrigan said. Someday you'll know what they gave, what we all gave, and maybe you'll be inspired to give something too. That fall, Harrigan's contract at West Point came up for renewal. He sat in the dean's office considering the offer. We'd like to make this permanent, General Stone said. Full professorship, benefits, the works. I'm 66 years old. How much longer can I do this? As long as you want. Jim, you're one of our most effective instructors. The cadets respect you, learn from you. We don't want to lose that. Harrigan thought about it, about continuing to teach, about spending his remaining years shaping the next generation. All right, I'll sign for 3 more years, but that's it. After that, I'm done. Fair enough. He signed the contract, committed to 3 more years of service. Different service than he'd known before, but service nonetheless. The months rolled forward, fall turning to winter, winter to spring, another class graduating, another group of young officers heading out to lead troops in a dangerous world. Harrigan stood at attention as they received their commissions, watched them take the oath, saw in their faces the same idealism he'd carried at their age. Some would lose that idealism. The world would beat it out of them, but others would hold on, would become the officers the military needed, would stand up when standing up was hard. He'd done what he could to prepare them. Now they had to walk the path themselves. In May, he received a letter, handwritten, careful script. Colonel Harrigan, my name is Lieutenant Sarah Chen. You don't know me, but you knew my great-uncle, Sergeant Major Thomas Chen. I graduated from West Point last year. I'm currently serving as an infantry platoon leader in the 82nd Airborne. I wanted to write to thank you. My grandfather David told me stories about Uncle Tommy, about his service, about his sacrifice, about how he stood beside you in a fight that mattered. Those stories inspired me to serve, to try to live up to the example he set. And now, leading my platoon, I carry his lessons with me. Do what's right, even when it costs you. Thank you for honoring his memory. Thank you for fighting when fighting was hard. Thank you for teaching young officers like me what it means to serve with integrity. Respectfully, Lt. Sarah Chen. Harrigan read the letter 3 times, felt something breaking open in his chest. Tommy's legacy continuing, growing, spreading to new generations. He wrote back that evening, Lieutenant Chen, your great-uncle was the finest soldier I ever knew. He saved my life, taught me what honor means, stood beside me when I needed him most. I see his influence in you, in your choice to serve, in your commitment to doing right. He would be immensely proud. Keep his lessons close. Pass them forward. That's how legacy works. Not in monuments or medals. In people. In the values we carry. In the examples we set. Serve well. Come home safe. Colonel James Harrigan. Summer arrived. Hot days. Thick humidity. The campus quieter without cadets. Harrigan used the time to write, documenting the Triton case, creating teaching materials, building resources for future instructors. Michael visited with Sarah Elizabeth, 1-year-old now, walking, babbling, full of energy and life. "Grandpa!" She ran to him on unsteady legs, threw tiny arms around his neck. Harrigan lifted her up, spun her around, heard her laugh, that pure, unself-conscious joy only small children could produce. They spent the afternoon at the river, Michael and Sarah Elizabeth and Harrigan, skipping stones, watching boats pass, just being together. "Dad," Michael said while the baby explored the shore, "I've been thinking about leaving the advocacy group." "Yeah? Why?" "Because I want to do more. The group does good work, but it's reactive. I want to be proactive, build something new." "What did you have in mind?" "A foundation for families of service members killed by preventable failures, not just equipment, but training accidents, medical malpractice, all of it. Help them navigate the bureaucracy, connect them with resources, give them support." "Michael, that's ambitious." "I know, but Dad, after everything we went through, after seeing how hard it was even with your connections and experience, I keep thinking about families who don't have that, who get a knock on the door and a flag, and then they're on their own." "What would you need?" "Funding, legal support, a network of contacts, and probably your blessing." "You have my blessing. You've always had my blessing. This is good work, son." "Will you help?" "However I can." They sat together watching Sarah Elizabeth chase birds. 3 generations, connected by service and sacrifice in the particular bond that came from shared struggle. The foundation launched that winter. Small at first, just Michael and 2 volunteers working out of a borrowed office. But it grew. Donations came in. Bradley's foundation partnered with them. Reeves provided legal expertise pro bono. Within a year, they'd helped 50 families, navigated VA claims, secured benefits, provided counseling and support, and the simple knowledge that someone cared. Harrigan served on the board, attended meetings, leveraged his contacts, watched his son build something real and lasting. Legacy, growing, evolving, becoming more than any one person. On a cold morning in December, Harrigan stood before his final class before winter break. Senior cadets, about to graduate, about to step into a world that would test them in ways they couldn't yet imagine. "This is our last session before you become officers," he began. "So I want to leave you with one final thought." They leaned forward, listening. "You're going to fail, not because you're bad officers, but because you're human. You'll make decisions you regret. You'll compromise when you should hold firm. You'll stay silent when you should speak up." He paused. "Let that sink in. When that happens, and it will happen, you have 2 choices. You can let the failure define you, or you can learn from it and do better next time." A hand went up. Cadet Williams, Army bound. "Sir, how do you move past failure?" "You acknowledge it. You own it. You make amends if you can, and then you commit to doing better. Not perfect, better." "What if the failure costs lives?" "Then you carry that weight. Forever. But you don't let it paralyze you. You let it fuel you. Every day you wake up and you try to be worthy of the second chance you got." "Is that what you did? After the Triton case?" "The Triton case wasn't my failure. It was Vaughn and Kessler's failure. But yes, I've had failures. Decisions I regret. People I let down. And I carry that. But I also keep moving forward. Keep trying to do better. That's all any of us can do." The class ended. The cadets filed out. Several stopped to shake his hand. One handed him a card signed by the entire class. "Thank you for teaching us what it means to serve with honor." That evening, Harrigan sat in his small quarters looking out at the Hudson. Ice forming along the banks. Snow beginning to fall. The world going quiet and still. His phone rang. "Michael." "Dad, I wanted to let you know. Sarah's pregnant again." Harrigan felt joy surge through him. "Mike, that's wonderful. We just found out. Due in July. And Dad, if it's a boy, we're naming him Thomas, after Tommy. The old warrior would have loved that." "I know." Michael's voice was thick. "I want his name to continue. Want our kids to know who he was, what he stood for." "You're a good man, son. I learned from the best." After they hung up, Harrigan stood at the window watching snow fall over the river. Thought about Tommy Chen, about Sarah, about all the people who'd shaped him. Thought about legacy, not his own, but the collective legacy of everyone who'd stood up when standing up was hard, who'd fought when fighting seemed impossible, who'd chosen right over easy. That legacy would continue in Michael's foundation, in Lieutenant Sarah Chen's service, in the cadets he'd taught who would become the officers the military needed, in his grandchildren who would grow up knowing that honor mattered, that doing right counted, that some things were worth fighting for. Spring returned, then summer. Harrigan's 67th birthday passed quietly. Just dinner with Michael and Sarah and the grandkids. Sarah Elizabeth, now 2. Little Thomas, 6 months. Both healthy, thriving. Harrigan held his grandson, looked into those infant eyes. "You've got a big name to live up to," he said softly. Thomas Chen was the finest man I knew. Strong, brave, honorable. But more than that, he was kind, he cared. He showed up when people needed him. The baby made small noises, reaching toward Harrigan's face. "Your parents are good people. They'll teach you right from wrong, and when you're old enough, I'll tell you stories. About your namesake, about what real courage looks like, about the price of honor and why it's worth paying." Michael appeared beside him, reached for his son. "He likes you. He tolerates me, like his sister." They sat together on the porch, evening settling over the neighborhood, kids playing in yards, dogs barking, the ordinary sounds of life continuing. "Dad," Michael said, "I want to ask you something." "Go ahead. Do you feel like you succeeded? Like the fight was worth it?" Harrigan thought about it, about the cost and the price and the 3 years that had passed. "Yeah," he said finally, "I do. The system's not perfect, probably never will be, but it's better. Marines are safer, families get support, young officers are learning that speaking up matters. That's success." "What about you personally? Did you get what you needed?" "I got to watch you build something good. Got to meet my grandchildren. Got to teach hundreds of cadets what honor means." "Yeah, I got what I needed." They sat in the gathering darkness, 3 generations under one roof, safe, healthy, together. The old soldier had fought his last battle, had paid his dues, had done what needed doing. Now he got to rest, got to watch his family grow, got to know that the fight had mattered. Legacy wasn't about monuments or medals. It was about this: sitting on a porch with your son, holding your grandchildren, knowing that the world you were leaving them was a little bit better than the one you'd found. That was enough. That was more than enough. The old soldier had earned his peace, and in the quiet moments between heartbeats, he finally allowed himself to feel it.